OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Hey, it's 7:30, it's Friday morning. You're welcome to OTB AM. Stack show for you today. Eoin, Sheahan, good morning to you.
Morning, Adrian.
How are you getting on?
Yeah, good. How are you keeping?
All good. I presume you're buzzing this morning, a bit like the rest of us. This is such an unlikely start to the show, and we'll give you a bit of a flavour of what's coming up a little bit later on. Is that it is Stack show for you this morning, but we're in the very unusual position this morning of having watched Arsenal last night on, as I'm sure you did. I was looking more, I have to admit, at the United game. But they're suddenly we're talking about Arsenal in real positive sense. A powerful showing last night.
You clearly haven't watched Nicola Pepe play football on a Thursday night before. He is the king of Thursday nights. Arsenal are the kings of Thursday nights, and we can actually sort of say that without a dose of irony this morning, because that has been the existence of following Arsenal Football Club for the vast majority of the last 10 years. It has been to exist in a very ironic way. That's the only way you could kind of get by and accept the pain that they would give. But last night, I mean, coming up against Slavia Prague, they were almost something you could be slightly proud of, which is not something you could really say too much about Arsenal at any time over the last decade. I mean, Slavia Prague, of course, the team that were accused of racism. They had the player who was accused of racism, Andre Cordella, who got a 10-game ban during the week after that Rangers incident a few weeks ago. The reaction from Slavia Prague afterwards didn't exactly cover themselves in glory either. You had a Czech government official writing to UEFA saying that the punishment was completely unprecedented for a player who did no harm to anyone and only verbally offended his opponent. The Czech government official said that essentially white lives matter and that this will lead to discrimination against non-black players as time goes by. So not exactly a great bunch of lads, Slavia Prague. And when it came to the pre-match ritual of taking a knee beforehand, shock horror when Slavia Prague decided not to take that knee and instead stood arm in arm on the halfway line. Except Arsenal didn't do that. Arsenal took a knee. Alexandre Lacazette, right in the face of those lovely gentlemen of Slavia Prague, down on one knee, staring them in the face, which was an absolutely incredible image. When you see it, you're like, oh God, and it's impossible. It's human nature to think, oh God, I really, really hope Arsenal back this up. And it's nothing about having any affinity for Arsenal. It's like, God, this is suddenly a bunch of players you're really rooting for. And then on the pitch, they actually really delivered. And Arteta said afterwards that the players took the initiative completely when it came to this. They had the right reasons to do it. The club was completely supportive of them. And the players took the initiative in the game as well and hammered them. And those, 40 fans or something that was in the stadium last night went away very unhappy. And I think everybody else came away from the game very happy indeed.
Yeah, delighted with life. And you're right, you talk about sort of supporting Arsenal. Like we are all Arsenal this morning. We were all Arsenal last night. It's such a unique thing to be able to say. But you spoke about the trials and tribulations of following Arsenal over the years. Like it's following a football team isn't about success really when you think about it. It's about the lure and it's about the lore of a club, right? I don't, when you talk to somebody about why do you follow a club, they don't say I follow Liverpool or I follow Leeds or I follow Longford because they've won stuff. People don't say that. They tend to say, well, it's to do with those things, that those personality traits in a club. So it's not, I don't think, really about the success of a club. But taking that stand last night, well done Lacazette, well done Arsenal. And beating that Shower 4-0 last night was nowhere near the best thing that they did. The powerful image that we've seen on screen there a couple of moments ago, that was captaincy, that was leadership for me. I think that was taking a stand. It was also telling UEFA pretty clearly where they can shove their 10-game ban, right? I think that was a pretty clear outcome of it as well. And I do think also as he kneels in front of those players, the Slavia Prague players, he's holding a mirror to them. They've been themselves pretty silent about this over the last little while. He's holding a mirror to UEFA. He's holding a mirror to football. He's holding a mirror to society. I think it was a really powerful thing. And as you saw it unfolding last night, you could see his teammates kind of looking at him. It didn't seem as if it was that orchestrated in advance to the point that he had sort of told everybody this is what he was going to do. But I just thought it was powerful. I think that let there be more like him out there.
Yeah, 100%. And when he scored his second goal, he put his fist in the air as well, or Nicola Pepe had lifted up his arm. It seemed, I think it was kind of a little bit out of shot, so you weren't exactly sure what was happening, but I think it's safe to assume that's what he was going for with the celebration. And yeah, you're right, it's just a very weird situation to look at an Arsenal team that actually have belief in what they're doing in a greater sense than just the football that they're playing, and actually have stones about them. And like it's just I'm as shocked as anybody, really. Now, in fairness, these group of Arsenal players, I don't think they've ever been left wanting when it comes to speaking about social issues and things like that. It has always kind of been the football. So maybe I'm mixing those two things up a little bit in my mind. But still, it's unusual to be talking about Arsenal in such a positive sense.
Yeah, no, and let's talk about that aspect of it, because like Arteta afterwards was saying, this is us. Right, and it actually really stood out for me as a comment, because I was like, I mean, is it really? I mean, it's almost everything that you aren't in terms of the football side of it. So, was at Arsenal last night, like, have we seen that they can get fired up by a cause, and that level? Like, I wasn't sure leaving the game whether to be hopeful for the future of Arsenal or assuming that what happened last night was a kind of a one-off event because they were fired up for it.
Yeah, maybe. I think there's probably a difference between Arsenal being fired up for things and Arsenal maybe not having the focus or having a ceiling for doing absolutely absurd things on the pitch in a very, very bad way. I think that ceiling is always there for Arsenal. I think that there was probably a kind of like a manic focus on them having to back up the taking of the knee before the game a little bit, or kind of maybe getting a little bit pissed off at the opposition. Another reason for why they were really good last night might be because Slavia Prague aren't actually that good, and Slavia Prague maybe were a lot better than they really were the previous Thursday, and maybe Arsenal are just a far better team than Slavia Prague. Maybe that's all.
Fan coming out and Arsenal, and that's that. Oh, we can't be that good, surely.
But like that could potentially just be it, that they were way better. Like, I mean, there is a very good evening coming to Unai Emery now in the semi-finals, and if they win that, then it's going to be Manchester United possibly in the final. Like, I mean, there are 3 extremely tough games to get a trophy that really matters to them, and in all 3 of those games there is a high possibility that we will reacquaint ourselves with that high ceiling for the absolutely crazy things that tend to happen in the defence and in the midfield in that Arsenal team, and indeed up front, to be honest with you, this season. There are enough holes in that team to have serious concerns about them showing that performance consistently last night. It might just boil down to the fact that they were a little bit angry and the opposition they were coming up against were actually pretty rubbish last night. That does not distract from the fact, though, that it was a great performance and that this Arsenal team are really a bunch of people that are really good people, and it's as simple as that. The fact that this was completely player-led and independent of any outside influence as well really hammers at home. It's
been the greatest 24 hours on at offer in the modern history of Arsenal Football Club, between what happened on the pitch last night and everything that was going on up the road with the Dulux dog.
Like Dulux dog, I would like to I don't know, we should call him Ray Parlour or something like that, christen him something different. He has done an absolute solid for everybody at Arsenal Football Club by destroying Spurs on social media yesterday. Like, I feel kind of sorry for the Dulux dog admin. I wonder if it is the same person who runs Phil Foden's page. Is it the same company? Like, or is it the same person who just had a massive one on Twitter over the past 36 hours or thereabouts? Because, like, I mean, all you can do is just say respect. Like, when people.
Well, Dulux are launching an investigation on. I'm sure you've seen this, that they're having a look. I mean, I don't know what's to be looked into. Like, somebody went a bit rogue on the old Twitter account, and actually, as it turns out, there is a very slim chance. Slim to none, I would offer, that we'd have been talking about Dulux this morning, only this stuff kicked off yesterday. So, I mean, the value they've got out of this, everybody now knows that they're the preferred paint supplier to Tottenham Hotspur.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, big respect to Dulux Paint this morning, and that's coming from a Crown Paints fan.
I mean, I think that's probably the place to leave that. We are interested in your thoughts on it, though. If you've got thoughts about the Dulux dog or about the greatest 24 hours in the modern history of Arsenal Football Club, we want to hear from you this morning. Do get your comments coming into us. We have a packed show for you this morning, and it is 20 to 8. We're going to give you a bit of a flavour of what's coming up over the next little while. You are watching OTB AM. We're live in association with Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. And here is what's coming up in the show today. Ronan O'Gara is standing by. Talk to him in a couple of minutes. Obviously been a fascinating 3 weeks since we were last chatting to him on on this show, and a brilliant 3 weeks for La Rochelle as well for himself. So we'll get his thoughts on that, and looking ahead obviously as well, a pretty interesting Huntington Cup semi-finals en route as well. We're going to talk to the Junior Minister for Sport, Jack Chambers, is taking our call this morning. That's at 8:05. If you have any questions or thoughts for him, then do get those into us in advance of that. He'll be live on the line just after 8 o'clock this morning. 8:20, we'll let you know what's happening across the back pages today. The Dubs on the road in Leinster, it turns out, is one of the biggest stories there. Daniel Harris is going to talk to us about events at Arsenal and Manchester United last night. Could they meet in a Europa League final? It looks almost likely, you would think, at this point. We'll have the very latest for you in sports news at 9:15, and then Alan Quinlan will reflect. There's so much to get our teeth into with Quinny, including Ireland-France this weekend, and those new law changes that I know he wants to get stuck into, particularly around the red card. That'll be coming your way at 10:09. Crappy quiz at 9:10, and then John Giles will see us out from 9:30. But as I said, do get your comments coming into us over the course of the morning. We're with you, myself and Eoin, between now and 10 o'clock this morning. And that Dublin news zone, I don't know, it's on some of the back pages this morning. They're going to play a couple of their matches away from home. It's not really such a big deal, is it? There's not going to be any fans there. It's effectively neutral venue, even if it is at Mullingar or wherever it ends up being. I don't know. Dublin are going to steamroll Leinster.
Yeah, when Dublin do the 7 in a row, don't let anybody tell you that they didn't face serious adversity on their way to doing it. What's the headline on the back of the Herald this morning? Rocky Road?
The Irish Independent is Dubs in line to hit Leinster Road twice in Sam defence. The Herald has, let me see, Rocky Road for Dublin.
Rocky Road indeed. We probably need to start questioning, have we been too harsh on the Dubs? Is this punishment too severe, too draconian on Dublin GA, that they'll have to play 2 games in a different part of Leinster that's not under the jurisdiction of Dublin? So, God, yeah, really, it's a massive uphill battle for them. Like Sisyphus himself will be Dublin in the Leinster Football Championship this year.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of mad stuff. Like the fact that it's even a story this morning and that we're discussing it at any great sort of length in terms of it impacting in any way, shape, or form on Dublin's chances of progression in the Leinster Championship and beyond this year is almost like in itself such a ludicrous notion that, I mean, you've even had some of the Dubs coming out, I think, over the last couple of months saying that the Leinster Championship is a dead duck and somebody should just take a bullet to it.
Yeah. Like, did you say that Mullingar is one of the?
No, I'm not sure. I was just offering it
sorry.
as a. Yeah.
You were just, sorry, because I was about to say I've missed the story there, which is a massive day for Westmeath coming up. We obviously don't know the championship draws just yet, but I'm sure you're hoping for Westmeath to draw the Dubs now and get them down to Fortress Mullingar. Yeah,
no, it's the short story. I mean, either way, maybe that is the best thing that could happen. I mean, I don't know. We're looking at a knockout scenario again, so maybe you are just better off trying to get them in a final and have your day out and get your 20-point thumping, and everybody stays at home happy. Right, it's coming up on 8:15. Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you.
Hi Adrian, how are you?
How are you getting on?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, not too bad.
We were
sunny day here.
Sunny day. The weather is fantastic. It turns out like a bit of good weather is great to lift everybody's mood. Although your own mood must be flying high. We were chatting to you on this show 3 weeks ago, and you had obviously Bordeaux, Gloucester, and a potential quarter-final ahead of you. 3 from 3. Have you managed to enjoy that last 3 weeks, or how's it been?
No, it goes on. It goes on pretty quickly. We play Leon tomorrow in a crucial game, so that's been moved. Obviously, there's a lot of COVID cases back over here, so there's 3 or 4 games cancelled tomorrow in the top 14. So we're clear, and so are Leon. So it's played tomorrow at 9 o'clock tomorrow night. So it's a big game because no doubt the last few weeks have been really enjoyable. I was reading some of your piece in the Irish Examiner this morning about how the week is stacked up, and you're probably not getting as much time with the players, it seems, as you might like. Are you, even separate to that, over those 3 weeks, obsessing about those games as they and about the little gains that you can make, or how have you found yourself over those? What have you learned about yourself as a coach over the last 3 weeks? I haven't actually taken pause on that really yet in that regard, Adrian. I think the most important thing is probably what the team has learned, and I'm central to, I suppose, giving that message afterwards on a Monday. So it was good in the fact that we played with 2 English teams, obviously, but complete different, I suppose, styles of playing, and we were able to play differently, but also play quite effectively. So, you're always trying to, I suppose, build your playbook and build your appreciation of what is needed in a certain moment. But I think still keep coming back to attitude and I suppose the desire of players. And once you kind of see that in them, I think that overpowers the strategy side of things.
Because you're still ultimately going to be slightly unsure as to what that attitude looks like when the chips are down.
Yeah, it's. I think when things are going well, you have to acknowledge it too, and they're going well now because they're going to hit rocky periods, and we've had it in the last 24 months or 20 months, and sometimes it's very hard to get momentum, but we have momentum now, so the key is to try and keep it for as long as we can. There's potential of 9 or 10 games left in our season, so it's not unrealistic to think you can keep it for that length of time. So that's the plan.
It was interesting looking at the reaction after the Leicester game, after you gave the interview on BT, where the Irish audience was like, this guy, we know this guy, we've seen and heard a good bit of this guy, we know what he's about. Whereas the English audience were like, this guy, I don't know, this guy used to play. Wow, he's this guy can speak as well.
Yeah, you just kick it to the corner.
Were you?
Yeah, exactly.
Were you taken aback? There was a massive reaction to that interview you did after the Leicester game.
Yeah, it was. I put it down to, I think the Irish and the English public are starved of top 14 rugby, as I said numerous times. We always just get a highlights package on a Sunday or a Thursday on Sky Sports, and it was, I think, no one enjoys watching, 6 or 7 average top 14 games in its entirety. But I think when you kind of clip it into a 30-minute package, it makes for great viewing, because there are some fantastic players playing in France, and there's big names playing in France, but there's also some serious skill there. But, our minds aren't, I suppose, aligned to relegation, and it's only when you live a relegation and the kind of a championship with relegation in it, there is no denying that your thinking is altered, in the fact that under any circumstances you don't want to be involved in that battle, Adrian. So results do become important, very important, obviously, but then the key is, as a coaching staff, that you don't let it eat away into dictating how you play, and because otherwise you just play very, I would say, negatively. So that's the challenge for a lot of coaches over here.
What was before the logical, critical thinking part of your brain kicked off when the draw was made? What was your first thought?
Well, the first thought was kind of, hopefully you'll be your first or third out of the drum, that's what you're looking for. And obviously it's home advantage with a big asterisk, but it makes it easier, obviously, than, the thought of going to the RDS is a lot more difficult than the thought of receiving, even without the public. So at home, was where you wanted to be, and when it was Leinster, it was like, oh, okay, that's where we are now. It's us or them going to a final. So how exciting is that?
Yeah, a few texts from home, I presume. Like, if Munster can't do it, O'Gara beating them is the next best option.
No, I think I'm gone too long for that. I think people are over that. I think it's a different stage of everyone's life now.
Ronan, when it comes to playing an opponent that I guess so well, you've got such a history against Leinster, you're watching these guys play a lot. When you're then planning for them as an actual opponent coming up in a few weeks' time, do you sort of have to park the knowledge you've already built up about them and start afresh with your prep?
That's a great question, and good morning, Eoin. But I don't know them that well. Obviously, I knew them as a player, but that's so long ago, and everything has moved on, and that may be an error to presume you know them, because I haven't, and I have obviously watched a few of their games, but I wouldn't say I've studied a lot of their games. So it'll be like what you did for a quarter-final or what you did for 1/8 of a final, and the fact that you have to build us as much information as you can about them, but that's them. You know, my focus all season has been on us, and I feel that with the challenges involved in that, there's so much work in that, and you may get a few breakthroughs by studying them, but we know how consistently good Leinster are. So, like, the reality is you can spend an awful lot of time coming up with one power play that you may dissect them with, but also how do we get speed into our game, or how do we get us passing with accuracy? That has to remain a fundamental or a rock of our performance for every time we take to the training pitch, because training after the Sale game wasn't good, and that's not good. That means that we haven't adjusted our mindset about, okay, that's last week, it's over, we got to move on to the next challenge. So in that regard, the Leon game becomes a tricky game because they're fighting for their lives. But there will be, obviously, the week into the Leinster game will be exciting in one regard, but it'll also be hugely competitive in another regard. But I don't have 3 weeks to prep Leinster.
When you say training after the Sale game wasn't good, what are you looking at? What are the indicators that show you that just to your eye, your instinct in terms of just skills errors, you know, and concentration levels, giddiness, you know. So you just need to. We get limited time on the pitch, so you have to make that count. You know what I mean? We're reviewing the video and afterwards saying, well, I should have done this and that, but you've kind of missed the moment there. You've missed the opportunity to get better. You've missed the opportunity to grow. You've missed the opportunity to add a layer into your performance. So that's something that as a player, those moments are precious, because you think 10 years is a long time playing, but it goes like that. You know, it's over before sometimes you realise it. And I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but you've got to kind of make the most of it. I presume that giddiness as a player is an amazing feeling, though, at the same time. So you know exactly what they're going through on a high at the same time while trying to bring them back down to a more reasoned level. Yeah,
you're right. It's exactly. That's the other key point on, is that it's uncharted territory and it's new ground, and well done to them, you know. And you want that, because that's why you're in sport, the same as anything, that you want to be doing something that other teams in the club haven't done. But when you're there, there's no point, turning up. You got to turn up with ambition.
Is that like when you talk about that giddiness run or the little bits of skills or whatever, like, is it a couple of players that sort of you can see spread across the group, or how does it manifest itself?
It is, but it's the same in everything, though. That's why the sport game, team game is so fascinating, because you're dependent on everyone. And as we know from a few examples in Ireland's Six Nations campaign, one or two poor decisions or poor errors, the whole team is affected. So you kind of really need your base level as high as you can among all the players, and that's something that's challenging, but it's not necessarily something to stress too negatively about it. As you said, if the intention is there, everything is possible.
Did you watch the Leinster Exeter game? What you make of it?
No, I didn't. I haven't watched it yet. No. Obviously, I heard it was 14-0, and I said, that's a surprising start to the game. And then I heard that the scoreline at the end. So that is some performance, 14-0 away from home, and the mental capacity to steady yourself, regroup, lose Johnny Sexton, and bring on Ross Byrne. That's an impressive squad effort.
Like, it sends out an unbelievable message to other teams as well, doesn't it? I mean, no more than yourselves, in terms of being like they're never out of the game almost.
Yeah, it is, but that's you're talking about one of the best teams in the history of the Champions Cup, Adrian. That's where Leinster have been since 2009, you know. So that's what great teams do, and they are a great side, and there's very few teams that are great sides. So that's what you expect them to do, and they dug in for each other, and they got that result. But that makes it probably more exciting from a challenger's point of view.
How much is it, if at all, about the trying to obviously outfox, like you mentioned, the quality of the Leinster team obviously over the last number of years and everything they've won and the plaudits that the coaching ticket have got. How much for of the whole thing for you is it about trying to outfox Leo Cullen, Stuart Lancaster? And I know you said obviously you focus on your own team and your own strategies and stuff like that, but how much is it about trying to outfox? Is it about coming up with new stuff to take them on? Is it about more of the same, or what are you thinking? I know it's a few weeks out and you haven't got into it in too depth yet, but what are you thinking in that front?
Well, obviously you're trying to set yourself up to succeed, you know what I mean? You wouldn't be thinking about Stuart or Leo, who have huge respect for and admiration for what they've done there. We're only starting off on our journey in this club, but it is semi-final stage. It's a game that you need to be really sure of your plan, but being really sure your plan is good in training runs, but can you do it when you've Leinster defending you? You know, so it's the game is full of mini battles everywhere, and the Leinster think tank will have seen plenty of opportunities to exploit us, and our coaching group will have a look to see where we can have a go off Leinster. But that's the beauty of sport, you know. I think it never really comes down to one moment of kind of outfoxing the opposition coaches. There's 80 minutes there where you got to try and put the Leinster team or vice versa, them under as much pressure as you possibly can, and you're hoping, you know what I mean, if we're in the game, that after 70 odd minutes they crack. But that's a general plan.
Is it helpful to think about what it might look like winning the entire thing at this point, or is that just not of any benefit?
No, it's very, very, very important to dream, but you have to really take yourself back to the moment, and then you know what I mean, when you get closer to the game, you just you're thinking about your next play. You're going to get distracted and giddy by imagining yourself running around a stadium with a cup. That's not what happens. You gotta stay in the now and stay focused.
Yeah. We'd hopefully catch up with you again before that game. A few weeks away yet, and obviously, as you said, important stuff to be dealt with domestically as well. In the meantime, the big news obviously during the week that Simon Zebo is going back to Munster, and you've written a bit about it in the Examiner this morning. What I was going to ask you, sort of, would you pick Simon Zebo or Hugo Keenan at 15 if you were picking a team tomorrow for Ireland? And both were available.
Tomorrow, you pick Hugo Keenan because he's in form. He's deserves exactly what he's got. He's been one of Ireland's best players for me, and there's no debate on it at the minute. What happens now is the fact that Simon re-enters the calculations to play for Ireland. He has to perform well for Munster. If he performs well for Munster, he gets into the Irish training camp. If he performs well in training, he may get a shot at it, but the incumbent is rightly Hugo Keenan. Performed excellently, but it's all of a sudden you have a player with huge X factor who has the capacity to play big on the big occasion, and that is only an advantage for Irish rugby.
Is Simon Zebo as fun to play with as he is to watch?
Yes, everything about him is great on. Fantastic company, fantastic, I suppose, philosophy on life, fantastic guy to have in your camp, very positive, huge energy, and adds an awful lot to an environment.
Does it look like a move that he's making to see out his career, Ronan, are you thinking, or is this a...
No, I don't think so. I think, a top 14, the opportunities in France, unless your GIF are becoming narrower and narrower, And I'd say they signed Buffelli, Racing did, so that was probably something that, you know what I mean, was a call that Simon said, okay, well, if they look like they're putting their eggs in his basket, so for me it's time to make a move. But he's only 31.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's amazing because of like he has genetically he has an awful lot of strong points. He just needs to knuckle down to training like he's well capable of doing, and he is doing, and he's going to be a serious asset to Munster and Ireland.
One other thing we want to ask about just before we let you off, Paul O'Connell was talking during the week about who his Lions captain might be, and it was an interesting and it must have been a very honest shout from him given his position with the Irish team, and he was talking about Owen Farrell. I don't know if you'd seen that, but he was...
No, I haven't seen
that. He the phrase that he used was he's almost coaching, was the thing that he was using as the main reason to think that this guy would be the Lions captain. Is it you didn't do a huge amount of captaincy, is that fair enough to say over your career, which is almost surprising in some ways given what we've seen you to go on to do as a coach?
Yeah, but sure, I played most of my career with Paul O'Connell, so that's why I didn't do much captaincy, you know. But I don't know, was it 06 or 08, Paulie missed the 6 pool games and we won 6 out of 6 without him, and that was another example in sport. If the show goes on, no matter how good you are, you know what I mean, the team is always first, and the team didn't miss Paul on that occasion, but it also was an opportunity for me to do a bit of captaincy. But it's something that, you know what I mean, I think the real captaincy, I think, yeah, they stand out, the real captains, but what's also nearly as important, Adrian, is your leadership group. You know, that is, because if you have all your eggs in one basket on the captain, and the captain being the leader, but like if he, for example, has a commotion, what's the word for HIA within the first 8 minutes.
We're getting French lessons here as well as a bit of rugby inside. It's great.
No, sorry. It's a bit early, sorry. No, but HIA, so he's gone after 10 minutes, then you know what I mean, you have to have plan A, B and C, so you need a number of leaders in their pitch, but Paul was obviously exceptional, and before that there was Keith Wood, and there was Mick Galway, there was Anthony Foley, so these guys were very, very, very special captains.
Ronan, just one last one for me. Also in your Irish Examiner column this morning, the very first paragraph, you say you shuffled your way through a long run. What is the Ronan O'Gara running routine, and how good is it for your head?
It's very, very important for the head. It's amazing, actually. I've never... The thought of going for a run is horrendous, but 1 hour after finishing, it's a different Raj, you know, it's a different person. You just feel an awful lot better, you feel clearer in your thinking, you feel sharper, and it's something that I've enjoyed since the start of the year, even though it's a particularly boring sport. But waddling, I recommend it to anyone, just exercise, it's needed.
Are you a podcast man when you're out running, or are you thinking?
No, absolutely not allowed.
Right.
No.
Why?
Me in my own world, Adrian, because I can kind of do the subs, or you know what I mean, who you want to finish the game with. Nowadays, when you have such versatility probably in your backline, you can go do all kinds of combinations. So I literally go into that kind of world of how would we look like with him at 10 or him at 12 or him at 13 or him at 15. So I just do a bit of that.
What's your 5K time?
I actually bought a new watch the other day. Actually, it was good, but my kids laugh at me. I'm not really a Sunto. I'm not really. It's a Norwegian brand. Is it our Finnish brand for trek running?
Well, I thought that was another French expression, Ronan, so that'll tell
that's
you.
Way over my head. I know I waddle away around, 6 minutes a kilometre on, you know.
But we're both nodding as if we've any sort of understanding as to whether that's good or bad. We'll assume
it's very light, very light pace. It's basically just turning over,
Yeah, well, look, when you hit middle age, Ronan, you gotta look after the body. That's the important thing, as I'm aware of. Well done over the last few weeks. Good to catch up with you.
You too. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Chat to you next week. See you.
Thanks a lot. Ronan O'Gara on the line there from France, and pretty interesting time, obviously, for him. We're going to catch up with the Junior Minister for Sport after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball.
Left foot a shot, low, and he scores! Luke Shaw makes it 2-0 to Manchester United with his first Premier League goal of the season. It's City 0, United 2 in the derby.
Manchester United will look to close the gap at the top of the Premier League to 8 points with a win at home to Burnley this Sunday. And we'll have full live commentary on Off the Ball. Brian Kerr and Nathan Murphy will call the action from Old Trafford from 4 o'clock. Arsenal versus Fulham is up first from 1:30 with Stephen Doyle on duty. There'll be the paper review and reaction to Ireland's French test in the Women's Six Nations, all to come this Sunday on Off the Ball.
Off the Ball. Don't miss a moment of the action every weekend from 1 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Brian, it's great to see the visibility. It's finally happening. It's all positive signs.
Yeah, it is. It's in some regards been a long time in coming, and I think the important place that we want to get to is normalising the media coverage around women's sport. As part of the Guinness Never Settle campaign, they have showcased that only 6% of media output is sporting output is on women's sport, which is insane. And it has felt over the last, certainly my lifetime, that you've had to really be extraordinary at an international level, at a real cutting edge level, to get any kudos in Irish media. You think about Katie Taylor, you think about Sonia O'Sullivan. But if you think about comparatively to men's, yes, we get that. But you think about all the different levels and layers below that, where it can be very niche and still get publicity, or it could be just National League and it's still getting publicised. So I think we've got to try and strike the balance. But it's brilliant to have poster girls for aspiring young you want to be athletes and sports people to identify a route to a goal that they want to achieve. And that is really important. It is part of the 20 by 20 campaign. If you can't see it, can't be it. It's so true. Any time that the Jackie Hurley, I've talked about this before, but Jackie Hurley has a brilliant book called Girls Play Too, and talking to my daughter about it, she gets inspired by seeing all these different women competing at different sports, and they can do it. And there's something clicks in their brain when they go, if they're able to do it, well, I'm a girl too, why can't I do it? And you just need more repetition, more visibility, and eventually we'll change the curve.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Yeah, 9 minutes past 8 on this Friday morning. In the ad break there, you'd have heard Brian O'Driscoll and Fiona Coughlin speaking to Valerie Wheeler on the Women's Six Nations show on OTB. You can catch that live every Thursday during the tournament. It's at 1 o'clock. You can find the podcast up in the OTB Rugby stream, or it's in the Off the Ball channel on YouTube. So it is almost 10 past 8 on this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM, and I'm happy to say that the Minister of State for Sport, Jack Chambers, joins us on the line. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, and thanks for taking a call. We've been trying to get you for a while, so a few little bits to talk to you about, including we might come back to the, I'm sure you heard in the ad break there, Brian talking about the 20 by 20 movement. But first up, the GA teams breaking bans, and obviously a number of weeks ago you had mentioned about how it had undermined the public health messaging. Given the fact that you're giving 30 million plus, including COVID payments obviously to Croke Park from the government side, in that context, have you held conversations with Croke Park about that, about the Monaghan and Dublin undermining your public health strategy?
Yeah, so when the two instances that you've referenced happened, we had direct engagement through officials in my own department, just reflecting our disappointment at what had happened, and obviously urging them to reinforce the rules and the fact that teams needed to comply with the staggered return of sport, and that's obviously happening gladly next Monday for inter-county Gaelic games. In fairness to Croke Park, they were very quick to reinforce that and to send a very strong message, and the president and the director Tom Ryan both sent a very clear message when we outlined the broad reopening of society and sport, whereby they urge teams to comply with the rules. I accept there's frustration across the sport system generally, but I think the issue I had at the time was that a lot of people want to do a whole variety of things in sport and across other areas, and we just need to try and maintain compliance. And in fairness to many inter-county players and teams over the last 12 months, have played a very positive role in promoting the public health message. What happened in those two incidents didn't help, and I think, to be fair, majority of teams and across Gaelic games, ladies football and camogie have complied and promoted the public health message, and I think the GA, in fairness, came out with a very strong message prior to the public breaches, but also since with the process of sanctions that they're working through.
Yeah. So, and in terms of those sanctions, and maybe we haven't seen the edit of them yet, but obviously there's been a couple of 12-week bans for the managers of either county. Just again, given the level of funding that's come from government to Croke Park, did you seek assurances, or were you given assurances in terms of the level of sanction there? Because you've mentioned about it being that they've come out very strongly against it, but I mean the net result obviously being a medium-term ban for the manager. Is that to your satisfaction?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to. Obviously, there are rules and procedures within the GA which dictate what the sanctions are. I don't think it's my role to set the bar around what that means within their organisation.
Yeah, only that. I'm sorry to cut across you, Minister. Only that you are obviously providing that level of funding to Croke Park and undermining public health messaging is a fairly serious accusation.
Yeah, no, it is. And in fairness to the leadership within the GA themselves, Croke Park were very clear in supporting the public health message. There were obviously a couple of breaches from teams, and where that has happened, they need to ensure there are sanctions and they need to be worked through. But we want to ensure, in terms of you asked the question and answer that, on funding and supporting the sports system generally, we obviously provided huge support last year to the GA, but also all the other governing bodies to try to see them through COVID. And that's not only about the inter-county, inter-county season. It's also about supporting clubs, grassroots, and as I said, the broader sports system. So we're working through the funding asks of all governing bodies at the moment. Obviously, the scarring effect from COVID is severe, with suspension of sport for across outdoor and indoor over such a period. And what I want to see as Minister is that when we're in a position to get as much sport back, and hopefully that'll happen as soon as possible, we actually support our clubs, our grassroots and our governing bodies to get as many people back playing and participating as possible. And that's the nature of why government supports sport. But also, there has to be adherence to the rules, and Croke Park were very clear in their message around the public health message, and they have to see through the consequences for those that haven't adhered to that.
Just one last one for me on that. If it happens again, is a 12-week ban enough for you?
Well, I think there certainly has to be a clear message from whatever sanction comes that there are consequences, and
which would have to be more than a 12-week ban then.
Yeah, I think at this point, if there was a team that has, say for example, was training this week in advance of them being allowed to train next Monday, when there's been a clear message sent from everybody that what happened in the two instances was completely unacceptable. I think that would have to be a higher bar, particularly with the with the clear message that's been sent to everyone, and I think Croke Park would have to see that through.
Minister, what is the status of the dossier that was sent to the Department of Justice on the Monaghan situation?
I know that was referred by Minister McEntee to obviously to Croke Park, and she referred it on to I believe to Garda Síochána. I haven't received that dossier myself, so I'm not obviously privy to it. I've seen what's been reported through the media and the various pictures and the breach, but I haven't received it myself, so I'm not aware of where that's at.
There are people who will say that obviously the reaction to this has been completely overblown, that it's people just training outdoors and it's in a safe place over the last month or so. It comes back to the idea that the GAA perhaps didn't fight as hard as they might have for their elite status earlier on this year. What's your version of that event? What was the exact representation made by Croke Park to hang on to their elite status earlier this year?
Well, as you know, when we went into level 5 in mid-autumn last year, there was a special exemption and derogation at that point to enable the All-Ireland Championship to happen, and that lapsed at the end of the year. And then obviously we were in a position early this year where we had a complete, public health difficulty, as you know, with thousands of cases and a huge amount in hospital. So that was the background to it. We have had a very positive relationship with John Horn and and good relationship with Croke Park as well. And their own COVID committee, for example, in February was clear that they didn't feel they were in a position to have inter-county training or fixtures restored at that point. And I suppose what we've tried to do, I know it's been a slow restoration and reopening of sport in other areas, but I'm glad to be in a position now where on the 19th of April they're obviously they'll be returning to training, and it's good to see certainty around league fixtures and then the championship as well. But going back to your question, I accept people have different views about, obviously we all want to see as much participation and training outdoors as possible. But this is about when we are in a pandemic, when we are trying to get broad adherence to rules, we just need everyone to comply with them as they are. And Croke Park were very clear around how they were dealing with breaches, and we obviously are underpin the broad reopening of society with rules. And I accept people have different emphasis on different things they want to see open. From my perspective, I said we've tried to prioritise obviously the restoration of inter-county games. It's important this month, which we've done, as well as actually expanding the high performance category in sport as well. So, for example, there are some pathway athletes who weren't carded for the Olympics this year, and we've tried to expand that definition. So they're all going back next Monday as well. And then obviously on the 26th we have got the training in pods of 15 again, which I think was something that many people were looking for. So and then in May we'll be looking for trying to get a greater restoration. There's obviously a lot of people between 18 and 30s or 40s that want to be out training and playing and participating, and a lot of feedback on that. And we'll be within government. I'll be trying to certainly expand the level of sport we have initially outdoors, but we've had a lot of feedback from governing bodies, obviously, about the amount of sport that's been suspended for so long. So we'll be trying to get as much back as quickly as possible.
Can we ask you to expand on that a little bit, because it is one thing that exercises people a lot, Minister, in terms of both adults and particularly in relation to kids, and it's not new news. I mean, Ronan O'Gara was out yesterday saying that socialising outdoors, it turns out, is positively impacts on the spread of COVID, in that it spreads less, obviously, is a thing that I think we were all aware of. But it's not new news that the negative impact that lockdown is having on kids particularly. Have we as a nation dropped the ball on that over the last 12 months? Could we? We're obviously moving in the right direction. We could have done this, I put it to you, a lot sooner.
Well, you know, as I said, we obviously had from the autumn up to Christmas, we continued outdoor training in pods of 15, which was something at level 5 that hadn't been in the original plan. Obviously, from January, there has been the suspension of outdoor activity and training between January and March has had a significant impact on participation, and we were trying to obviously promote that and get it restored as soon as it was safe to do so. And as you know, NEFIT's advice was that actually it would come back in May for under 13. So we've moved quicker than that in what we've done. I recognise the absolute importance for physical and mental health that we get sport and activity restored as quickly as possible. And I'll be doing everything I can to, you know, when we get, as I said, for young adults and the broader system returned, that we can get as many people back who potentially missed out over the last number of months. And in the new sport action plan, which I've been working through, one thing I want to do is over the coming months is to try and make up for that lost time and do everything we can with the sport system and governing bodies to, whether it's through membership or the sport system, how can we get as many people back who potentially slipped off the sport cycle because of the restrictions.
Sorry again to cut across you, but just on that, making up for lost time, I was reading an article, and the reason I specifically say it's not new news, it was that I was picking through an article from The Guardian last night, which was from April 2020, which was a report on the impact of lockdown on kids in Spain, actually, and they were talking about a lot of things that we've become very familiar with. It's become part of the narrative around this now, where you had kids fighting, sadness, anger, regression with toilet behaviours and so on. So we're spooling on a year, and we're saying that we're getting there in terms of forward planning, but we've known this is bad for kids for quite some time. Why haven't we prioritised that in relation to training and matches and organised sport? Because kids are often obviously housed in tight locations, communities that might not necessarily be able to facilitate sport in an organised way, that need that club back doing it. Why haven't we prioritised that, and why have we had the last 4 months, for example, where that hasn't been possible for kids?
Well, just as you remember, in January, so the background context was the severity of the third wave, where kids not only could they not play outdoors, they couldn't go to school. And there was a concern from public health perspective around the mobility around organised outdoor activity, and it's only this week. In fact, we have everyone at primary and secondary level back in school. It was an absolute priority for me as minister, and if you look at what's happened in April, which is kind of the start of our reopening. I know it hasn't happened maybe as soon as in April as everyone would wish, but there is a plan to do it and to restore it, and it was there, as I said, prior to Christmas as well. And I agree in terms of the restrictions and the impact on physical participation and for people's physical and mental health is significant, and I suppose.
Do you take advice around that, Minister? Outside of, I know you've mentioned NEFIT, but do you take advice around the impact specifically? Have you experts around the table who are advising about the mental health impact on children?
Well, we've got our sports expert group, for example, that brings in some of the medical expertise and some of the governing bodies, for example.
And is there somebody on that who's specifically talking about the mental health impact on children?
I have not on the sports expert group. There isn't. There would be the medical expertise in the governing bodies, but we engage with all the governing bodies, and I've engaged with young people myself. We had a positive engagement on a youth forum with young people on the impact of not only the restrictions over the last number of months, but also how we can ensure young voices impact sport policy in a more positive way.
I do think, Minister, people will be surprised to hear that the advice obviously has come from NEFIT, and we understand that, and it's obviously expert advice in that regard, but that when we are having conversations to the magnitude that we're having in terms of the impact that it's going to have on children, that there isn't somebody around the table who understands that field and is advising you on it.
Well, I mean, there is, from a governing body perspective, and obviously mental health is one of the considerations that, and the impact on physical and mental health is one of the impacts that are one of the considerations that that's referenced by many of the governing bodies. What we've had in terms of the expert group and on the return to sport, there's been expertise across the governing bodies from a medical perspective, and obviously anyone from with a medical background would look at the physical and mental health of the people they represent and the impact in the sports system. But obviously government takes its advice through the Department of Health, which has a significant, obviously, segment of that department is around mental health, and the National Public Health Emergency, and any public health doctor, it's about the physical and mental health of in their public health considerations. So it isn't a case of one consideration being the sole consideration. There is an absolute consideration within government on the impact on people's mental health, and when government is making decisions on matters related to restrictions, mental health is an important consideration. And that's why, if you look at when we had a severe lockdown in January, in terms of the support for people and the impact on their mental health was something that was regularly referenced, and the severity of ongoing restrictions had on people, and that's why we're anxious we get as much, we're outdoors, obviously safer than indoor, we get as much outdoor activity back as soon as possible, that we keep it back. And that's, I know it's with the phased return to sport, it is important that we keep it open when we can open it all.
Yeah, just one final one from me, Jack, before Adrian finishes, just on the idea of the Olympics. There's some questioning around whether or not Ireland's Olympians should be vaccinated before they go to Tokyo. Does it probably mean them jumping up the queue a bit for their vaccines? What's your stance on this? Would you put them up the queue to vaccinate the Olympians?
Well, yeah, no, I know there's been different responses to this across different countries. Interestingly, at our sports monitoring group, one of the representatives from the Athletes Commission kind of referenced the fact that that countries, there's been a message from the OIC that Olympians should follow the national sequencing as it's set out by each member state or by each nation themselves, and I think we've obviously got an age-based sequencing now, which is transparent and fair and based on the overall risk which age represents, and that's how we've decided to pursue vaccination right now. So I think, and that's, in fairness, that's what certainly from the international message from the Olympic Federation has been, that countries should, and the organisations within countries should follow the national sequence, and I think that's important, so we maintain the integrity around vaccination.
So no pushing up the queue for Olympians.
Well, no. We have, at the moment, we've got sequencing based on age, and that's transparent and fair. And I think certainly that was reflected by, we had on our sports management group, we've got a representative of the athletes themselves, and I think they recognise the sensitivity around this. And we've seen other instances of issues with our vaccination, in terms of who's prioritised over who. And I think we all know and agree that age is the single biggest issue when it comes to the vaccine, when it comes to the impact of COVID.
One last thing we wanted to ask you about, Minister, you would have heard in the ad break Brian O'Driscoll talking about the 20x20 movement. It developed the conversation here, I know it's something you're familiar with, about women's sport and the connection between women's sport and the Irish people. More than anything I've seen in my lifetime, it moved people, I think, physically and philosophically. It's finished now, and so that private sector solution is done. What's the plan?
Yeah, no, and I welcome the fact that your own programme Off the Ball are regular advocates of this, and I listened to Brian Driscoll in the ad break there as well. And we've had a very positive engagement with the 2020 campaign, and we want to embed a lot of their ideas as permanent changes. And I think that there's a few issues. Obviously, one of them at a governance level, we need to ensure that where decisions are made for sport and governing bodies, that there's an absolute priority in decision making around women's sport. And so we've got an issue at the moment where many of our governing bodies don't have proper balance on their boards, and I want to take strong action on that. We've had a lot of...
What would strong action mean in that regard?
Well, we've had a lot of soft targets in the past, which have not resulted in outcomes. We've got some of our NGBs that are still of less than 10%.
Yeah, IRFU has 8% at the minute.
Yeah, and that's not sustainable or acceptable from my perspective. So we're strongly examining gender quotas, for example, and that means if governing bodies don't make significant progress on this, that there'll have to be conditionality associated with their public funding. And I make no apology for that. I think we have to see...
What does significant progress mean? Does that mean that you want them to hit the targets, or you want them to make some
I think they have to. Well, no, I think 30% is the target, and I think for governing bodies that are still below 10% or even are making no progress near it, I can't stand over that.
No, and
it's progress on it.
Some progress is a bit of an Irish solution to an Irish problem, isn't it? I mean, if you were to just say 30%, or we're going to make punishments here.
Yes, yeah, and I think that has to happen. We've had 2 or 3 years now of soft targets, and some governing bodies that don't appear to be taking this seriously. And we all know if there isn't change from a leadership perspective and a governance perspective, how do we expect the whole organisation and structure to pursue the sincerity of how they want that to ripple through their organisation and their grassroots? And I think that's important. There's obviously also many other issues with the 2020 campaign. Obviously media is a big aspect as well. In fairness, there has been progress on that. I know, I wrote to RT earlier this year myself on making sure women's sport didn't suffer in any way in terms of the coverage, with say a lot of sports returning in the summer, that there was no deterioration of that. And in fairness, there has been a huge improvement there, and we need to see that strengthened and embedded as well. But also there is, I also acknowledge, say for example, we've had a lot of negative publicity last year, for example, on the disparity between what the WGPA and the GPA receive around, and the huge difference in what players receive. And from my perspective, I can't stand over that, and we're working through a review at the moment where I want to see all girls playing sport today need to know that the state and the governing bodies that represent their sport are serious about equality, about participation, and about there being no glass ceiling in sport. And in a 21st century in Ireland, we have to ensure a sport policy promotes that in a really positive way. Yeah. And I'm determined to follow through on that in every way I can.
And look, it is good to hear those words, and I'm sure people will take encouragement from them, coming from obviously the Minister for Sport. You just mentioned positive engagement there in relation to the 20 by 20 campaign. What was that in terms of action?
Yeah, so we met them last year a number of times, and also the Federation of Irish Sport.
You met the 20 by 20 campaign themselves?
Yes, we did. There's a subgroup of Sport Ireland that actually that has worked positively with the 2020 campaign, and we did myself and Minister Martin had an extensive engagement with them. We worked through the multiplicity of kind of important matters when it came to media, leadership, governance, funding, and balance and gender balance on boards, for example. So we want to, in our sports action plan, which we've been working on. It hasn't been published yet because I think it's important to publish it at a time when our sports system has returned. A lot of the actions that the 2020 campaign were promoting will be reflected in that. As a core part of our policy, and in the programme for government, we're also committed to addressing this matter in a positive way. And as I said, everything we do and every funding stream we have will be to achieve progress on many of the core issues that the 2020 campaign have promoted. I think they've plays an excellent role in advocating progress on this, and I want to embed those changes from a sports policy perspective.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing those. I know you're 9 months into the role, so we might have you on again at some point where we can talk about the actions off the back of that. You're into your sport clearly from talking to you. Would you like to see a more of a focus on sport, in that it's obviously one fragmented part of a larger group within the ministry? Would you like to see it? I know it's never had its own ministry, but even as a dual ministry might make it a bit more of a government priority.
Well, I think just look, as you said, I am huge into sport. This was the two things growing up were sport and politics, and played a lot of sport throughout between Gaelic football, rugby, soccer, everything else, and come from a family that's massive into sport as well. So, but just from government, this is a huge priority for government. It's not fragmented in any way. If you look at the funding last year and I think the funding again this year, it's getting that priority, but also, trying to see through a lot of the things we have in terms of sport policy and supporting our athletes, and I want to make sure we leave it, we put it in a much better place and achieve a lot of the objectives we've set out. But I can just assure you that it is a core. I think one thing that can be strengthened is say from the public health role, and you mentioned this earlier on. I think the role that sport can play around achieving like I said, public health at the moment, it seems to be dominated by what people perceive around the pandemic. But actually, if hopefully when we're in a space when we're not only talking about COVID figures, the role of sport can play in physical activity and mental health, and public health is enormous. And I think we can strengthen the role there, but also around education as well. I think how can we strengthen the role sport plays in our education system. I think if you look from a comparative perspective in Europe, I think you probably know this, we've all, from primary and secondary school, the level of physical activity and sport in school sometimes depends on that culture within the school itself. I think we have to have better number of minutes and hours allocated in any given day to physical activity and sport. I think that would play a huge role to across the sport system to actually to strengthen that. So I think we can feed the sport into more areas of government, and that's something I'm anxious to advance. And we've had good engagement with, say, Minister for Education, for example, and also Department of Health as well. So I think that's something that can be strengthened and have a positive, as I said, public and mental health benefit as well.
Yeah, well, look, I know we've kept you over time. You've been very good with your time. Minister for Sport, Jack Chambers, thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks very much.
All right, if you have any comments off the back of that, do get them into us this morning. We've still plenty to come. We've got John Giles coming up for you before 10 o'clock this morning. We've Alan Quinlan on the way to talk about rugby. We'll have lots to get into him about, including some of the rule changes that are going to be introduced for the Rainbow Cup. Simon Zubo's moved to Munster and a few other bits and pieces as well besides. So do get your comments into us over the course of the morning. We do want to hear from you, but it is coming up on 20 to 9 this morning. Daniel Harris, good morning to you.
Hiya.
We were at the top of the show reflecting on what a great 24 hours it's been for Arsenal.
I think the thing with Arsenal is in some ways they remind me of where United were a year ago, where their best level, their best performance is a pretty good level. The problem they have is they need to raise that bottom level. Their bottom level is still pretty poor, but when Arsenal play well, they've got some really good players, and they're a difficult night for anyone, because what they effectively do is they're quite organised at the back. They don't have great defenders, but they defend deep and they defend in numbers. And going forward, they've got players that are good enough to give any defence aggravation. And when those players play well, then Arsenal are a pretty good team.
How does that bottom level raise itself up over the next season, Daniel, without the obvious signing extra players or finding extra budget?
I think they've got a manager who got the job without any experience, pretty much. There was no real reason to think that Mikel Arteta would be any good, other than a hunch or this one, or a little bit of practice with Pep Guardiola. So he's been learning on the job, and he's going to get a lot better. Even if he's not a particularly good manager, he's still going to get a lot better, because he was starting from a very low base. So it's not just about the players improving, I don't think. It's about the manager learning how to manage and how to coach, and the people around him doing the same. So I think that's going to make a massive difference. He's going to understand better what his job is, and he's going to understand his players better as well. But also, they've got a lot of young players. Their best players are young players, which is unusual. And those players also have a huge ceiling. I mean, you do get some young players, and I think like Wayne Rooney was one of them, where they're so good when they're young that they don't actually improve that much because it's not possible for them to improve that much. And you look at Bukayo Saka and think, well, really, how much better can you get? Because he's so good already. But there are players around him who are going to improve. Emile Smith-Rowe is going to get better. I think with him in particular, he's someone you look at and think that if Arsenal are going to be a serious team, he needs to work on his numbers, because ultimately most good teams don't play with a number 10. And I think one of the reasons is because in order to have a number 10, you need numbers from that player in the end. Like start leading the press, all that kind of thing, generally isn't enough. Like you need goals and you need assists. And he's got quite a lot of work to do in that area. So I think if he's able to do that, then that will make a big difference. Kieran Tierney, if he can stay fit, will make a huge difference as well. He's going to get better. So yeah, I think that they've got quite a lot of room to get better. But as they stand now, as I said, like their top level is a good level.
From a Manchester United standpoint, then, are they the team that potentially worries you the most when it comes to Solskjaer going for the Europa League?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, worried is strong. I think it's cup competition. Look, like United are a much better team than Arsenal. The league table tells you that, and more. But if you look at the games that they've played against each other, that tells you that Arsenal are a really difficult matchup for United, because they defend. As I said, they're organised at the back. They defend deep, and United are often criticised for not being able or finding it difficult to break down organised deep defences, which is sort of a misnomer, I think, because every team finds that difficult. It is difficult. If there are 11 men standing between you and the goal, that's hard to break down. And they have such quality on the counter and such quality going forward that's a bad matchup for United, bad matchup for anyone. So yeah, I would, as a United supporter, I would much rather play Arsenal over two legs, because over two legs you would expect the better team to win, and that is United. Whereas in a final, Arsenal have more than enough to beat United. United have lost to much worse teams than Arsenal. So yeah, I mean, I think that Arsenal will probably beat Villarreal, but it would be very Arsenal to go and lose to Unai Emery in the semi.
It certainly would. Last week we were talking about what Manchester United should potentially do with Jesse Lingard. This week it seems that the conversation is around Edinson Cavani. What's your stance on what would be the best outcome for Manchester United in terms of their relationship?
I don't think United have much choice in that one. They want Cavani to stay. Why would they not want Cavani to stay? And he'll either decide to stay or he'll decide to leave. But absolutely the best option for United is Cavani staying, because, I mean, the first thing is he's still really good. The difficulty with Cavani is he's not been fit as often as United would like. But if you look at the areas in which United would like to strengthen in the summer, they'd like a centre-back, they'd probably like a deputy right-back, they'd like a number 6, they'd like a right winger, they'd like a goal scorer. They're not going to get all of those things. And if they do manage to hang on to Cavani, then they might be able to defer the goal scorer for another season, which would enable them to basically have a look at the players that are available. And instead of necessarily going to get a player for a particular position, they might feel more inclined to get players for the position where they think that a player who's good enough is available. So Cavani would take a bit of the pressure off to go and find the goal scorer. If Cavani leaves, United will feel much more that they needed to get a number 9. And if Cavani stays, they might feel that they could strengthen the other areas and worry about number 9 in another year, depending on how well Mason Greenwood's doing in that position. But if Cavani leaves, I don't think United will feel that they can just let Martial and Greenwood play there, and that would be sufficient.
Is it a case of one or the other, Daniel? Is it like if they keep Cavani, they're not getting Haaland, for example, or a top level striker? Like, is that the clear signal? So. If he stays, that's it?
No, I don't think so. I think that if United decide they want Haaland and they can sign Haaland, then you drop everything that you're doing in order to go and get Haaland, because that's how good he is. I think that United's transfer plans for the summer probably hinge to significant extent on whether they can get Haaland, because if they can get Haaland, then it's not going to matter about Cavani, because you're buying one of the best strikers in the world for the next few years. I think that the Haaland question is slightly different, because they might think, well, they don't want a situation where you buy a player and he stays for 3 years and then he goes, and there's agitation at that point because they're trying to build a team. So I think that they might decide that I guess at that point you're in a good position. Like whether if Haaland decides he wants to come to United, I mean, I think it seems quite unlikely. But if he decides he wants to come to United, then you're in a good position. And I don't think United necessarily say, well, that they feel that they can do without him. But I think, so if Haaland decides he's coming, then you drop everything else and you get Haaland, and then you deal with everything else after that.
Daniel, this morning there's been some new Paul Pogba stuff. I'm sure you've seen Sky Sports are speaking to him before the game against Burnley at the weekend. For people who've missed this, they've put out a bit of it on social media. He said, once I had a great relationship with Jose Mourinho, the next day I didn't know what happened. What I have now with Ole is different. He wouldn't go against the players. I haven't actually seen it myself, Daniel. If you have it, maybe enlighten us, but if not, no worries. This kind of, I guess, underlines maybe what people suspected about the Pogba-Jose relationship.
I honestly, like, if you can probably tell by the state of my kipper, I haven't seen it because I was in the pub last night.
Good man.
It was quite emotional, actually.
We're very envious. What was that like?
It was, honestly, it was quite moving. I was in the cab on the way there, and just like, it was quite a nice day in London yesterday, and so you could see people sitting out, and you might ordinarily be driving by thinking, dickheads, or some words to that effect, as you see people enjoying themselves. But I actually found it quite emotional, just like driving by everyone sitting out on the streets, and then walking into the pub and like seeing your mates there. And I'm going to sound like an absolute moron here, and I apologise if it sounds like I'm rubbing your noses in it. Walking into a pub and seeing a table with your mates, it kind of gets you, I hear.
No, we're with you. We are a bit jealous, obviously, but we're also we want some of that good stuff. We're not. Yeah,
it was like, you forget. I mean, you forget how much you adore sitting in the pub with your mates, boozing. I mean, simple pleasures. It sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but yeah. So it is for that reason that I have not seen what Paul Pogba said. But I mean, everyone knows what Mourinho is, and I think it's really. I see Mourinho now, and it feels quite sad watching him, because he was so brilliant and he's such a genius. But what you see with Mourinho, I think, is that, like everyone else, he has good points and he has bad points, but it seems like the bad points have consumed the good points. And so he still has the charisma, and you see every now and again just those little signs of what a brilliant man he is. But most of the time it's just the grousing, and the way that he treated Pogba was wrong. And you can understand that Pogba might have been difficult to manage at some point, and in some ways he's quite different to what Mourinho's like. But the thing with Mourinho, I think, is that he only has one speed, and he's brilliant with certain types of personality, and that kind of, I guess you might call it alpha male kind of personality, agitating people like Frank Lampard and John Terry and Didier Drogba, like manically, maniacally driven athletes to do what they can. Then you see someone like Paul Pogba, who is a bit more laid back. And I mean, he loves football, Paul Pogba. So, and that the kind of things people think he doesn't care. It's complete nonsense. Like, you see the shape that he's in, you see the way that he plays, the fact that when he's not playing, he's kicking about with his mates. Paul Pogba loves football. The thing about Paul Pogba is he doesn't have the natural intensity, I don't think, as a bloke. He's just a laid-back kind of bloke, and he needs to find that intensity from somewhere. And the way that you get the intensity out of Paul Pogba isn't the way that Mourinho got it out of the players who were best under him. Paul Pogba needs to love what he does, and that's how you get the intensity. Like you saw, for example, when he came off the bench against Milan, when United were drawing in a tie, and basically behind because Milan had an away goal, and just straight from the beginning he was into it and putting himself about. You saw the way he played against Tottenham the other day, where he was just an absolute giant. And the reason that he's doing that is because he's loving what he's doing. And Mourinho didn't have the interpersonal skills, if you want to talk like an HR idiot. He didn't have the interpersonal skills to be able to do that. And Fergie, for example, like for all the football stuff, Fergie was a human resources genius. And that was why he was able to do that. And Ole is brilliant like that as well. If you hear the way Luke Shaw talks about the contrast between Mourinho and Ole, he's another one, Luke Shaw, who needs to feel loved and needs to feel safe and able to express himself rather than have someone dissing him in the press all the time. And that's the difference between Ole and Mourinho. The players are really happy, and you're seeing the way that they're able to perform, that they're not scared to go out and express themselves because they know that most of the time, even if it doesn't work, the manager might have at them in private, but he's not going to diss them in public, and he's not going to shame them. Whereas Mourinho, when the team do well, he basically is sort of likely to take the credit. When they do badly, he'll blame everyone apart from himself. And that whole thing when he said like same players, same manager, different players the other day, what he didn't understand was that in saying that, he was actually insulting himself, because he thought that he was dissing the players and saying, well, it's those guys' fault. I managed to get these players to do that. But the actual situation is that he managed to get those players, like the Inter players that he had, for example, to do what they did because they were those kind of players. Now he has different players and he's trying to make them do what he did at Inter and what he did at Chelsea the first time. He doesn't have the players to do it. So what he actually did was inadvertently showed up, not his methods, and I say this a lot here, that Mourinho's methods aren't outdated, I don't think. If he had the right players for those methods, he'd have a team and the right abilities, he'd have a team that was near the top of the league. But what he's been trying to do the last few jobs is trying to impose a particular style of play that requires particular ability and particular personality as well, I think. Like, in order to defend 1-goal leads for 45 minutes or whatever, you don't just need to be as good at defending as John Terry and Ashley Cole were. You need that kind of bloody-minded personality as well. He doesn't have either of those things at Tottenham in the same way he didn't have it at United. So, yeah, I think that it is a shame what's happened to Mourinho, but it's not difficult to see why it's that way.
Like, sometimes we need to wait for a book to actually have the lid lifted on some of these things. But I think we already have enough evidence, Daniel, that this Jose era at Manchester United was toxic quite a lot of the time. And like, even just looking back on that training ground moment between Jose and Pogba in 2018, after he had stripped him of the vice captaincy, like, I'd actually forgotten he had stripped him of the vice captaincy up until this morning, like, looking back on these quotes. What was the reason behind that? Do you recall?
Why did he take the captaincy off him?
The vice captaincy.
The vice captaincy. I can't remember what he did now. Yeah. Sorry. I'm feeling slightly cloudy this morning. I can't remember why he did it. But the thing about Mourinho is also that everything is a show.
Yeah.
And that is another situation where it feels like he's making it about him, because he tends to put on that show not in order to take pressure off the team, but to sort of exculpate himself. And where he'll be like, well, look, I'm doing the right thing. And that is the thing with Mourinho, that when you have someone who makes it all about him, it only really works when you're winning. And it's the same with Mourinho kind of football too. Like, it's okay to play 1-0 football if you're winning, but then if you're not winning, it doesn't leave you with very much because it's not entertaining. And Mourinho himself has become a much less entertaining person than he was when he was winning. And he kind of keeps getting these jobs where you think, well, maybe this will be the job because this one feels like his last chance. Like when he got the United job, he had a bit of time off. He always wanted the jobs. You thought, well, if he can't change for this, then he's never going to change. He didn't change or get back to old Mourinho. Then I thought it was quite surprising when Spurs got rid of Pochettino to get Mourinho, because I just couldn't see any way that the bloke that they'd appointed was going to be better than the bloke they'd fired. But you're still in the back of your mind thinking, well, this is surely Mourinho's last chance with a job of this magnitude. But here you are. And I think, like, you're watching, when you support a Mourinho team, in the back of your mind, you know that it's not going anywhere good. So you know that every big win that you get sort of entrenches something that isn't good further into the club. And that is a very frustrating and disconcerting position to be in, where you know that you want your team to win, obviously, but you know that the wins are actually, in the long term, not necessarily that good for the club.
Yeah, the Pogba stuff was they drew 1-1 with Wolves in the league, and he gave out about their defensive style afterwards. In a move that was, I think, much more reflective of Mourinho. Like, Solskjaer would bat that away and say, listen, he's entitled to his opinion. We've seen him do that with players very specifically over the last while. It probably said more about Mourinho than it ever did about Pogba.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'd be less chance that Pogba would say that about Solskjaer, because Solskjaer, number one, he doesn't play like that, but also he has more respect for him. And with Mourinho, I think that it got to a point with those two where they really didn't like each other, and that's no situation for the club, for any club to be in, where the manager and the star player who is worth a lot of money to the club in terms of transfer fees, but also in terms of commercially, where when you have a player like Pogba, I'm sure one of the reasons United sanctioned the move for Pogba was that when you have a load of sponsors, what happens is that it's like people talk about shirt sales and stuff, but that's not really like that. Like, you're not going to make enough money on shirt sales to do anything significant. But what happens is when you have a raft of sponsors, you have to give them players for a certain amount of time in a year or whatever. And if you have a player like Pogba, what happens is all your sponsors, your Mr. Potato Heads, your Turkish Airlines of this world, they go, well, give us Pogba. And because he's the person who has a lot of name recognition. And what United are doing quite well now, I guess, is that they've got a few players like that. Like, you can come, the sponsors are going to come and say, give us Pogba, give us Rashford, give us Bruno. Those people who have recognition around the world, who people want to be associated with. And when you have players like that, they're worth a lot of money to the club commercially. And that's partially how the club sustains itself, but also partially how the owners keep filling their pockets with the club's money. And so when you have Mourinho falling out with Pogba, that creates a toxic environment in the dressing room, but it also creates a big problem for the club more significantly, in that if you think that the clubs exist, United certainly exists as far as the owners are concerned, so basically as an ATM. They can't have a situation where the person who keeps things ticking over in that aspect, Pogba, is giving aggravation to the manager. So it creates a whole host of trouble, and ultimately Pogba won.
We'd Graham Hunter, and I'm only pointing at this. I'm not actually going to ask you about it because we could be here for another half hour. We had Graham Hunter on during the week, and he was talking about liking Zinedine Zidane to Alex Ferguson. And I know that given your comments that you had last week, I'm just flagging up, Daniel. We're coming back to that at some point. Who's going to win the Champions League?
Who is going to win the Champions League? I guess City or Paris. Madrid in a one-off game, obviously Madrid have players to beat anyone, so do Chelsea, and you're never quite sure. But I would say, like, Chelsea actually probably a better matchup for City than Madrid are. I think maybe Madrid are a better matchup for Paris than City are. But I mean, I would expect the winners to come from the City-Paris game, but it's a final. So I think what will happen is that if City play like they played against Dortmund, I think that Paris will probably beat them because they've got better players than Dortmund do. But Paris do need to be more ruthless in front of goal than they were against Bayern. And they did get lucky, not lucky, but if Lewandowski is fit for that tie, then I'm absolutely sure Bayern sweep Paris aside quite easily in the first game, and they finished the tie in the first game. But that didn't happen. And Paris obviously have the attackers to beat any team, and they're starting to look more like a team. But they've got the defending's a bit better. If they've got Verratti and Paredes fit, then they've got a bit more in midfield than they had last season as well. So that tie will be excellent. I mean, obviously, so much about it makes you remember so much of what's revolting about football and the world. But once they actually get out on the pitch, you were going to remember or forget why that is allowed to happen, because that's how they get away with this stuff, because the football's so good that people sort of forget what's really going on for a minute, because it's impossible not to be absorbed by how good the football is. And I'm sure City and Paris will be a brilliant tie. City are a better team than Paris, but Paris are quite a good matchup for City, because they're a good matchup for anyone. When you have Neymar, Di Maria and Mbappe, you can beat anyone. The question is whether they can get enough of the ball. And I think the thing that City do really well, better than anyone, is that while they're retaining possession, they create chances. And I would expect City to take enough chances, but I think the fact that the first leg is at home is massively in Paris's advantage. It's meant to be an advantage to have the second leg at home, but the way I see it, if Paris get a win in that first leg, then I would fancy them to go through, and they then have 90 minutes to score more away goals than however many City got, and that feels much more like a big advantage, especially when there's no crowd in anyway.
Get the vitamin C into you. Thanks, William.
Yeah, vitamin Alka-Seltzer, exactly that.
Good man. Thanks, William. Daniel, fair play.
Thanks, see you again, lads. Have a good day, everyone.
Daniel Harris on the line there, discussing all things Man United, Champions League, Arsenal, plenty more besides as well. Alan Quinlan on the way very shortly. Reminder, by the way, Off the Ball on your radio tomorrow, 1 o'clock to 5 on Newstalk. John Duggan in the hot seat is going to be joined for a special feature interview with the Irish badminton star Nat Noyen, and that'll be coming away from about 1:30, show underway from 1 o'clock. After 2, updates from Ireland versus France in the Women's Six Nations. We'll have Alison Miller on duty for that, and Valerie Wheeler as well, reporting on that game over the course of the afternoon and previewing it as well from 2 o'clock. After that, it'll be Michael Collins, who's a PhD, Clinical and Executive Director with UPMC Sports, Medicine Concussion Programme, an internationally renowned expert in sports-related concussion. So, again, a special interview with him there coming your way before 3 o'clock tomorrow. And then, of course, 3 o'clock to 5, football all the way. And Stephen Elliott and Dan McDonnell will be joining John for that. And then on Sunday, also from 1, Joe Malloy presenting. It'll be actually from 11:30 across the OTB social channels will be the newspaper review, and this week it's Brendan O'Brien and Johnny Ward who'll be picking through the back pages and let you know what's going on there. We'll have plenty of reaction to that Ireland-France game, by the way, in the Six Nations as well. Can Ireland make it 2 from 2 and go on to meet inevitably England in the final the following weekend? We shall see. And then 1:30, the live Premier League commentaries begin. Arsenal versus Fulham. That's Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr on duty for that one. And then it's over to Nathan and Vinnie Perth from 4 o'clock. Manchester United up against Burnley. So that's a bit of a flavour of what is to come over the weekend. A quietish weekend of rugby, but nevertheless, Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
How are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah, Simon Zebo's back. It's a 1-year deal. We were talking to Ronan O'Gara about it and a few other bits and pieces earlier on. He wasn't so sure whether it's a temporary measure or not. What are you thinking?
I think it's, he's the kind of player that would excite any team to have him back involved with because of his ability and that bit of X factor and that off the cuff stuff that he can do, and he's finishing and stuff like that. But I suppose I didn't think before it happened that, Munster were there was a need to get him, given the back three players that Munster have, Mike Haley, Matt Gallagher, Shane Daly, Liam Coombs, Calvin Nash, all these guys who've probably come into the scene the last couple of years. But to have someone like Zebo coming back is and to actually have the RFU funding it is good for Munster. I think he's a great player. I love that he plays with a smile on his face, and what he can do is second to none. It's a lot of what he can do is what a lot of players can seem to do, and that's just do stuff off the cuff and play with a natural flair and brilliance.
It kicks off the 15 debate now in a big way for Ireland, doesn't it? We asked Raj about it earlier. He went for Keenan. He said on form he's got to be in there. Who are you picking if you had a team tomorrow? To pick a team tomorrow for Ireland, who's at 15? Both are available.
Hugo Keenan is at 15 because of the way he's played, and he's backed that up with performances for Leinster as well. I think he was outstanding for Ireland. But to have a little bit more depth there, I think you imagine, Adrian, if Hugo Keenan was injured in the morning, who goes in full back? Who's experience of playing there? Who's
it's been Larmour, Conway, like Stockdale at times, I think.
And how have they all worked out?
Look at absolutely.
Well, that's the problem. There's no doubt there's talented players there, but out and out full backs. He's an out and out full back who can play in the wing or possibly at outside centre if needed. But there is no out and out standout players, and that's why Hugo Keenan was a winger for Leinster, with a very good footballer who's taken the role brilliantly. So he adds more depth there, and I think that was probably the whole reasoning behind he was available. With what's going on in France, and they're having to reduce the number of overseas players and bring through more young French players. I think it limits a little bit in the options in all the top 14 clubs, unless they have their marquee signings, and I suppose a lot of them have a lot of overseas players. So it kind of reduced it a little bit, the opportunity, and I'm sure he wants to get home, and it's co-funded. So there's a chance here for him. It feels like it's a make or break year as to what happens with Simon Zebo. Personally, the contract, I'm sure, is reduced from what he would have been on in France, and he was available and was a contract put together for him. So he plays well with Munster. Gets into that Munster team, gets on the Irish team, and shows people what he can do again. Well, then that's the opportunity and the incentive for him to get a contract to probably of a couple of years going forward at the end of this year. So I think it's a good move for both. I think Munster are getting a player that they probably couldn't have funded themselves because of their budget and players they already have in that position. And it gives more depth to that full-back position in Ireland. So you couldn't rule out Simon Zebo, coming back, hitting the ground running and being involved with Ireland and playing for Ireland again, because he's such a super talented player.
I wonder, does it lessen, like a lot of chat about that the area they really need to bolster is in the tight five. Does it lessen the chance now that they might do that? Would that be pretty much, could potentially wrap up their business?
Well, it's not that's probably one of the hardest positions as a tight head, in particular. If you were talking about signing tight heads and world-class players at that level, they're hard to come by, they're expensive. And as I said to you on Monday, or said at the start of the week, there's a couple of young Irish qualified players there that hopefully will come through in Salano and Knox. So it's an area that obviously you'd love to go out and sign loads of players and have unlimited budget, but it's just something that can't be done, and they're hard to get. And you can't, if you go and get an international tight head, and even if it's only for a short-term scenario, it's cost you massive money, and then to get someone for a year or two to try and not hinder the players coming through, it's too much of an issue. So every team, the vast majority of teams need strengthening in certain areas, and they've got to make do with what they have and hope that the younger players come through. So that's the hope with Munster, and I don't think I'm not sure. I'm not privy to what the rest of their business is for the rest of the season, or signings for next season. But I'd imagine that that's probably that they won't be signing anymore. I don't know for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of like tying down world class tight head, perhaps Tadhg Furlong is the one marquee player for Ireland at the minute who's yet to sign on the dotted line. It seems unthinkable that, given the importance of him, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, it does. I think it does seem unthinkable. I think, again, nobody knows what's going on here. Maybe sometimes these contracts take a little bit of time, but ideally you'd want to get them done a few months before the end of the season. Historically, they would have been all kind of tied up even pre-Christmas or January at the latest. And he would be... Look, I doubt if anything will happen here. I'm sure it's the nuts and bolts of the contract, and he can command probably he can probably at this stage be the top earner in Ireland because of his importance and because of his quality. And he will go on another Lions tour, and I think his form that he's shown since he's come back has been outstanding. But it would be unthinkable if he was to go anywhere. But I doubt it very much if that will happen.
Yeah.
Be allowed to happen.
Be allowed to happen is right. The Rainbow Cup looks like it's going ahead. They're introducing some new law variations. So one, there's going to be a captain's challenge where a team can challenge the referee for try scoring moments or acts of foul play up to 75 minutes, and then anything in the last 5 minutes. The defending team goal line dropout, that, we'll see how that goes in certain circumstances. And then maybe the most interesting one, the red card for the player that gets sent off. They are off and they can't come back on, but that team is allowed to reintroduce a substitute 20 minutes afterwards. What are you thinking?
What do you think? What I'm thinking? I think a red card is a red card. I don't agree with that one. What's the point? They should just increase the length of the sin bin or something like that. Give someone a red card and you can bring on another player after 20 minutes is something I think is I don't agree with it. Yeah. I find it hard to see how that will work. If a player gets sent off, the whole thing to kind of highlight the fact of foul play or the reasons for being sent off should affect the whole team as well, and that whole decision that the player makes. Sometimes, to be fair, and we've seen a lot of it in the last number of years, challenges in the air, the high shots, some of the collisions. There's been so much debate about the high tackle sanctions and all that kind of stuff, and some are reckless, some are intentional, but the vast majority are I wouldn't say intentional, but they're accidental is the wrong word. They are reckless for sure, but there's been lots of debates about these headshots. And when I think about it, I think maybe if it was deemed accidental, but to the letter of the law, one of these collisions, i.e. in the air or in a tackle situation, if it was deemed accidental, I probably could accept the fact that, you know, an accidental act in a tackle or a collision in the air, it has big ramifications for a team when you go down for 40 to 14 men, particularly if it happens early in the first half or early in the game. Obviously, intentional stuff. If you're reckless and you tackle someone with force and with real intent to kind of hurt the opposition player, and you get a red card for it, your team should suffer as well, because the coaches picked you, and to incentivize. I'd be worried that this is a case now of, well, look, because we're gone in a situation where, and I know it's frustrated a lot of people that watch rugby in the last number of years, that there has been a lot of cards and there has been a lot of debate. And I've been kind of banging the drum about changing tackle techniques, coaches drumming this into the players, finding different ways, getting lower in the tackle height, no charging, going off your feet into breakdowns, driving more than diving off your feet, and all that kind of stuff. That now we're going to say, well, sure, look, what's the worst case scenario if you get caught, and if you hit someone in the jaw with your shoulder or your high tackle, or you charge into a ruck, it's 20 minutes. We'll be back to 15 men then. We can rally the troops for those 20 minutes, manage the game, and get back to 15 players.
Which is exactly the opposite message that I think they're trying to generally send out, oddly.
Yeah, and I do understand. I think, look, it's a trial situation, but I don't know, like, if you get a red card is a red card. Now, some of them are wrong and some of them are very debatable. I do understand that. So maybe if there was a situation where the TMO reviews it afterwards, the red card is given, and he comes back to the referee and said, look, we've watched this numerous times and we feel that it was accidental. There was some mitigation there. And okay, we're okay with the red card, but we feel now that the whole team shouldn't be punished for something that's accidental. So we're going to allow a player come back on the field after 20 minutes from that red card. Maybe something like that. But look, it's a trial situation, and, you know, there'll be for and against in any of these decisions and any of these changes. And, you know, we have to try some things for sure. And I may be wrong, but I think, you know, when I just think of a red card is a red card. And the only kind of movement I would do in it is if it was accidental and the referee had to give the red regarding letter of the law and all that kind of stuff, fair enough. But maybe if it was accidental, that you could get the a different player back on the field, and it wouldn't hinder the team overall.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I presume that the thinking behind it, Alan, is that games just become a write-off after a red card on some occasions.
Yeah, for sure. And I understand that. I said it at the start on. I think, you know, if a player gets sent off, particularly early in a game, the chances of that team winning, particularly when there's two kind of evenly matched teams playing, the team with more numbers in the field, the 15 players, usually wins that game. Of course, it can happen that the other way around as well. So it's trying to make... I can see the logic behind it. But I would have an issue with it on if there's someone who's very cynical and they do something that's really, really reckless, and a player is injured and there's a lot of force in a tackle, and if they're red carded, and the team should suffer as well for that situation. If it's accidental and there's mitigation there, well, then the team shouldn't suffer. So we should differentiate between the two. And I think that's where I would accept that scenario, because, you know, I think if, as I said, if it's intentional and stupid and the opposition player is injured, the team should suffer as well.
Just finally, we've about a minute here on the Ireland-France game tomorrow, 2:15 kickoff, and obviously Ireland looking to go 2 from 2, but a big step up from the game last weekend.
Yeah, it is a big step up for the Ireland women tomorrow. I think it maybe shows the strength and depth of the French setup. They're semi-professional, but they've made 8 changes from their team that they selected in round 1, who beat France 53-0. Maybe they've loads of strength and depth here. I don't think they're underestimating Ireland, but I'd say they fancy their chances coming to Dublin, making those changes and winning the game. It's hard to know where the team are. Were Wales poor last week, or were Ireland brilliant? There was a mixture of both. Ireland were brilliant at times in that first half. Baby Parsons, what a star. I was chatting to her early in the week and doing another event, and I was saying any of the men's teams would be mad to sign her because she's phenomenal. She's a superstar. Dorothy Wall was brilliant as well in my old position as a 6. Hannah Tyrrell at fly half. So they have a lot of quality. They have a lot of players who are brilliant rugby players, and I think putting it together has been the key for them. They've had 20 training camps since October, since they played Italy. So I think there's a lot of positive signs there, and fingers crossed they can do it against France tomorrow. They're a very powerful side. And the challenge, of course, is when you're playing a team that's semi-pro. So the vast majority of these French players are full-time rugby players, and that's always a difficulty and a challenge. And Ireland, until the women's team, or whether they will or not, go full-time themselves, that's always going to be a challenge. But you feel it's a different game for sure. But it's on home soil, and if they get enough of quality ball to their backline, I think they could surprise the French.
Yeah, we should all be watching 2:15 tomorrow. Best of luck to them. Quiddy, thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Thanks
a lot. It's gone at 9:15 on this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Reminder, by the way, on our weekly golf podcast, Golf Weekly, funnily enough, and it's now available on Patreon, and you can get that if you head along to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly. Masters Week obviously drawn to a close. Busy one for the Golf Weekly lads. They started with a preview pod of the tournament with Paul McGinley. Then it was the early preview pod last week, and the first ever major watch along party, that was on the Sunday, and there was several thousand people along for that one, all patrons. That went out just before the leaders teed off on Sunday evening. Conor Moore was along for that, Conor Sketches, and Troy Merritt as well, and they've recorded 3 separate pods also looking back in the week, so there's loads of good stuff on there. One of them with the former Ryder Cup captain Paul McGinley, who gave some brilliant insights into the mindset of the Masters champion Hideki Matsuyama and why he should have been more cautious in the final round.
I was playing head to head with Olazabal. It was, you mightn't have been on Turkey, and I was 3 shots ahead with 2 holes to play a tournament in Spain. And it was the year Olazabal won his second Masters, and it was about 2 weeks before he won the Masters. And I'm 3 shots ahead, playing in the tournament on the last day, playing with Olazabal. No, I wasn't playing with him. I was 3 shots ahead. I think he'd finished. Par 3, I'm playing great. I got control of the tournament. I'm feeling so good. I'm feeling so confident. It's a par 3, 220 yards over a big ravine, pin on the back left with a ravine left of it as well. And I hit 5 wood, which was a stupid shot to play. It was a 3 iron up to the right. Worst I was taken was 4, 2-shot lead down the last and win. And I hit it left, pitched in the side of the green, went down the left, and went down behind a rock. Ended up taking double bogey. I then bogeyed the last, and I lost the tournament in the playoff to Olazabal. And it was a dumb, stupid thing to do. I had the tournament won. I had a 3-shot lead with 2 holes to play. And because I was feeling so good, I didn't play the tournament. I played the fact that I was feeling good. And playing the tournament, it would have been a really good, strong caddy in my bag at the time. Would have been, you know what, Paul? No, you're hitting it over the front right of the green here. The worst you're making here is 4 with a 2-shot lead. So that's how I feel, but that's why I feel so strongly about it. It's and he'd done so well up to that stage. Certainly up to 15, I thought he'd played a very clinical round of golf.
Yeah, that's Paul McGinley reflecting on the Masters Week special pod. And with Golf Weekly, you can get exclusive access to all of those podcasts and watch parties and all of that good stuff, and the Discord channel as well. You can head over to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly, become an official friend of the pod for the price of $3.99 a month plus VAT. So it's a snip. Head along and do that. It is a 9:20 almost on this Friday morning. We've Crappy Quiz on the way, John Giles on the way. First, here's a little flavour of what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. At midday, the split season of hurling will feature on OTB Sports Radio. 1:30, the Paddy Power half hour is going to mark your card ahead of the weekend's football. At 3 o'clock, it's live Friday night racing in the company of Ger and Johnny and guests as well. From 4, John Caulfield is the subject of the Team 33 League of Ireland legend. At 6 o'clock, some OTB Gold, the life and times of Johnny Caban. Live off the ball tonight from 7 o'clock with Ger, and then Team 33 at 9 p.m. this evening. So stay with us. We're back after these. It's the Crappy Quiz.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Women's Six Nations is here, and OTB Sports is your one-stop shop for all the best coverage, analysis and opinion.
As Ireland take on Wales and France to decide their position on finals day, we will bring you a special weekly Six Nations show with some of the great names of the game, as well as special interviews with Irish legends Sophie Spence and Rosie Foley.
With reporters at the games, all the latest team news, match previews and much, much more. Check out otbsports.com/Women's Six Nations.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of news, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Chris Waddle.
Oh, you're kidding me. September.
Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
Is that right?
I know, it's not right.
Anybody else?
Leash, was it?
Like, that is one of the most stupid questions.
Darius Vassell? Seriously, you all need to just stay quiet. This is getting really annoying doing this quiz.
What is going on here?
Welcome along to the shoutiest segment on Irish radio. It's the scintillating, it's the stupefying, it's the splendido Crappy Quiz. Every Friday we pit 3 of Team Off the Ball up against each other in a no-holds-barred quiz of sporting factoids at the end of the week. Allow me to welcome today's contestants. Our first contestant today felt the wrath of Adam Johnson on YouTube's comments once again this week. Mr. Johnson said, Adrian is like a lad bluffing his way through higher level maths, knowing full well he's going to have to drop to ordinary anyway. Clearly, his level of bravery to take on 2 golf nerds last week has gone unrecognised. Give it up for Adrian, who's your daddy Barry.
That was a mistake, taking on 2 golf nerds last week. And I mean, what Andrew Johnson, what was his name? Adam Johnson says, yeah, there's absolutely correct. I mean, the only slight caveat is that in reality, I knew I was never going to get anywhere near honours maths on, so it was pass all the way. And unfortunately, there isn't any pass maths version of the Crappy Quiz, because that'd be my natural habitat, I would say.
You are the domestique of the Crappy Quiz. You put in the hard yards, knowing that flashier quiz people like John Duggan and Joe Malloy will occasionally come along and steal the headlines every so often.
The domestique is something I could label myself with, all right.
Our next contestant is like a man who heard the Beatles before they were signed. He told us about Will Zalatoris 2 months ago. He told us about Will Zalatoris a month ago. He didn't tell us about Will Zalatoris last week because instead the whole world was talking about him. He knew Zalatoris before it was cool to know Zalatoris. Give it up for John Bon Duggan.
Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Adrian and Phil.
Just your name ringing in my ears when he started to climb that leaderboard. All I was hearing was Zalatoris in your accent. So I guess that there's honour in that, John.
That sounds like something out of The Simpsons, but it isn't. I'm delighted that Will Zalatoris played so well at the Masters. I'm a bit more apprehensive because I knew the Masters quiz would go well last week, but I'm probably going to have more brain freezes than somebody who eats a lot of cold ice cream today. So I'm waiting for to be hammered out of this competition by Phil and Adrian.
Our last contestant today is smiling now, but he was quietly seething watching John Duggan win the quiz last week. How could another former legend of Today FM come along and rip his crown away without his presence even being recognised? Back and angrier than ever, it is Phil the Power Egan.
Hey lads, good to be back.
Like there's an air of... Go for it, Adrian.
There'd be no specialist topic that I think that Phil wouldn't excel at. Like you couldn't pick a niche topic that Phil couldn't give a good stab at. Like where I just go for the past maths and get on with it. Phil will be stick me in for honours. I'll make something of it.
I actually fell into that trap of thinking I could do honours, and then at 5th year Christmas test results came in, and I just put my hands up and I said, right. It was the only exam I've ever done where I genuinely don't think I can come out of that exam thinking I got a question right. Yeah, it was horrific. So I went down to past maths in 5th year, and I have to say life was so much better after it.
And from that moment, he never got a quiz question wrong again.
Phil, you answer questions with the assurance and calmness of somebody just lobbing steaks to crocodiles. Just no problem.
No problems. You are applied maths. John and Phil are applied maths. Johnny being touted as one person who might be able to take down Phil the Power Egan, so we will see.
Don't put any bets on that.
The classic crappy quiz is the format this week, with a series of questions on a range of themes, and then the slip and slide of trivia. The rapid fire round is what will separate the men from the boys here. Podcast the crappy quiz on otbsports.com or on the OTB Sports app. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to click the thumbs up, even if you contribute nothing but misery to your day. Round 1 is the boring questions round. It is never multiple choice. Adrian, can you name 3 out of the 5 main coaches that supported Warren Gatland during the last British and Irish Lions tour? So that's
Rob Howley,
yep.
Neil Jenkins, and I think this isn't my answer now, but I think I'm just thinking out loud here. Andy Farrell might have been one of them. Forwards coach. There was no Irish person. There was a rake of Welsh, as is typically the case. I don't think there was any Scot in it.
Well, you are correct. You've got 2 from 3. Howley and Jenkins, assistant/attack, and your kicking coach.
It's in the mix are Graham Rowntree, Andy Farrell.
Going to need to push you for an answer here.
I'm going to go with Andy Farrell.
Correct.
Well done.
Graham Rowntree also would have done. And then the 5th coach was Steve Borthwick.
Borthwick, yeah.
Just on the question was the main coaches. I mean, there was some shade thrown at kicking coaches this week. By Andy Dunn.
Yeah, so that was the subtext, Phil. Thank you for identifying it. This was a stand up for the kicking coaches moment. Question 1. Adrian, 1 from 1. This could be it. This could be your day.
This is it.
John, question 1 for you could only be about one man. Will Zalatoris came pretty close to winning the Masters on his debut last weekend, but who was the last player to win the Masters on their debut?
Buzzy Zeller.
Correct. That was feeding steak to a crocodile, John. That is how you do it. Phil, question 1. Jude Bellingham became the 2nd youngest scorer in the history of the Champions League knockout stages on Wednesday night. But who is the youngest ever? His record still standing from 2008.
2008? Oh, God, because I was kind of going down the Ansu Fati route there, but 2008. I am struggling here. I'm trying to think of the teams around 2008, right? So you're looking. Nah.
What's going through your head?
It's going to be. I'm thinking it's like somebody from Real Madrid or Barcelona. I don't think it's a Premier League club. obviously, like Messi doesn't fall into that category. He was a bit older back then. So, no, I don't think I have one. Like, there's no point in taking a stab.
Pass. Is this a pass?
This is pass maths, yeah.
Well, foundation level, Phil. That's it.
Anybody want to hazard a guess?
I'm only thinking of players born in 1991. Kevin De Bruyne wouldn't be.
No, it's not De Bruyne. It's Bojan.
Stoke legend Bojan Krkic.
Stoke legend. He scored for Barcelona against Schalke in April 2008, aged 17 years and 217 days. Bellingham is 17 years, 289 days.
That was an extraordinary, difficult question. Wow.
And you know, I'm not saying this, just his name actually came into my mind, but I thought, he's older.
Yeah, well, he was very young in 2008. He is older now. That is definitely true. Round 2 is the £1 million question round. In the history of the UK version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, there have been a few occasions where the £1 million question has been connected to sport. In this round, you would each get a £1 million question that actually happened on the show that focused on sport. Adrian, in the history of motorsport, which of these iconic races was held first? A, Le Mans 24 Hours, B, Monaco Grand Prix, C, the Indy 500, or D, the Isle of Man TT?
Can I phone a friend?
Ask the audience.
Take a 50-50 and use them all. I'm knee deep in Drive to Survive at the minute, so I mean, you know, I'm something of a motorsport expert, obviously. It has got to be the Isle of Man.
Correct.
Well done.
Adrian, 2 from 2. Barry. John.
£1 million, thank you.
Which of these is not one of the American Triple Crown horse races? A, the Arlington Million, B, the Belmont Stakes, C, the Kentucky Derby, D, the Preakness Stakes.
It's the Arlington Million.
He's correct. He's won £1 million.
I mean, that was like bringing the crocodile up to JD bound and like in the back of the truck, and you could barely just, I mean, with a safety net.
It was like one of those Roger Moore Live and Let Die crocodiles. They weren't actually real. They were just jumping over them. That was a beginning.
You've got a great ability to answer a quiz question in a way that makes me feel like I haven't challenged you at all, John. That certainly happened with your first 2 questions here. Phil.
Don't worry, it's a facade, don't worry. I'm the Wizard of Oz of the crappy quiz.
But it's also true, I mean, is the point. Like, you know, that's his wheelhouse right there.
Phil, which boxer was famous for striking the gong in the introduction to J. Arthur Rank films? Was it A, Bombardier Billy Wells, B, Freddie Mills, C, Terry Spinks, or D, Don Cockle?
I'm gonna go.
Phil stuck again?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with B.
B, Freddie Mills. No, it's not. It's Bombardier Billy Wells. Phil Egan, 0 from 2. Adrian Barry, 2 from 2. John Duggan, 2 from 2. As we move on to round 3, which is the retired numbers round. After we all laughed at Birmingham City for retiring the number of Jude Bellingham, they certainly had the last laugh, as it turned out Bellingham is good at football. This round will test your knowledge on the still slightly alien process of football clubs retiring a jersey number. Adrian, only 2 players have ever had their jersey retired for AC Milan. Paolo Maldini's number 3 is one. Can you name the other?
I was going to say Paolo Maldini. Oh, I can't believe you stole that one from me. That should have been a gimme one. That surely should have been gimme one answer. One of the 2 people.
That's pass maths. Give us the honours answer. Can he go 3 from 3? Does he have it in him? Does he have the bottle? This would be redemption, Adrian, if you manage to pull this off.
There's nothing to do. I was to redeem all my previously really poor performances.
Adrian Barry, of course, champ in 2019. What a time that was. Can he roll back the years with an answer here? What are you thinking, Adrian?
I mean, is it now that you've taken one of the answers from me, surely you have to give me a bit of a steer as to whether we're going back pre-Maldini or post.
That sounds like a clue, Adrian.
Can't be giving you any clues, I'm afraid. Gonna have to push you for an answer. Maldini's number 3 and which other?
I mean, I don't know. I'm going to go with Cesare Maldini.
No. Good guess, though. It was Franco Baresi.
Franco.
His number 6 was retired. John, in general, Italian football loves to retire a number for a former player. Only 3 non-Italians have had the honour, though. Diego Maradona's number 10 for Napoli is 1. Can you name either of the others?
Just the player, not the number.
Just the player. So non-Italian, other than Maradona, who got their jersey retired at a Serie A club.
Michel Platini?
No, it's not Platini. Anyone? Anyone know the hazard, I guess? No, Javier Zanetti got his number 4 jersey retired by Inter Milan. The other one, I don't suspect anybody would have got, but fair play if anybody did get it at home. It was Jason Maiele, the Chievo number 30, who died in 2002. So Javier Zanetti, really, the one there. Phil, can you bring it back to a 1-point game? Which former Premier League footballer ended up becoming the only man in the storied history of the New York Red Bulls to have their number retired? He's thinking. He's got his thinking face on. American soccer. This is a big deal to get your number retired. Who was it?
I mean, Henry played for them, but he was there for so short a time, and it's not. I can't imagine he was that good. The only other player that I can think of with New York Red Bull for Premier League players is Bradley Wright Phillips. So if I say Bradley Wright Phillips and it's Henry, I look pretty foolish. If I say Henry and it's Bradley Wright Phillips, I don't look as foolish. So, and then if it's neither of them, I still look foolish. So, I'll go Henry.
No, it is Bradley Wright Phillips.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that is painful.
Oh, no.
It was such a ludicrous answer. It couldn't possibly have been right. That's incredible.
He number 99. Yeah, number 99 scored a load of goals. Bradley Wright Phillips, a legend of the New York Red Bulls.
Phil, there's still time. There's still time, Phil.
Still time. You're 2 behind still, Phil. You're on nothing. John and Adrian, you're both on 2 points as we move on to the fun-free magic number round. Contestants get 3 points for getting the number exactly right. If no one manages that, the nearest contestant who doesn't go bust gets 2 points. The second closest gets 1 point. I'm going to state that we can only accept the answer that's written on your paper. I'm also going to have to ask for your pens once the music ends. So if you don't mind, give us the following number. The number of Champions League goals scored by Phil Foden this season, plus the number of tries Simon Zebo has scored for Ireland, plus the number of Heineken Cups won by Leinster, plus the number of teams that took part in Euro 88. Your 30 seconds expire when Sinatra sings Bright Shiny Beads. So, how many Champions League goals has Phil Foden scored for Man City this season? How many tries has Simon Zebo scored for Ireland? How many Heineken Cups in general, have Leinster won? And then how many teams took part in the European Championships in the finals in 1988? Add them all up, what do you get? Pens down. John Duggan, what have you got?
22.
Adrian?
34.
Phil?
28.
28. I can tell you that the answer is 24. So John Duggan gets 2 points. Adrian and Phil both went bust. Wow, we could be looking at a repeat of last week here, gentlemen. It's the number of Champions League goals scored by Phil Foden this season is 3.
Yeah, I have that.
Chat.
Simon Zebo has scored 9 tries for Ireland.
Okay, that's where I went wrong.
The wrong man that.
Leinster have won 4 Heineken Cups, and then 8 teams took part at Euro 88, which brings your total to 24. John, you were 2 off. Good guess. You do get 2 points for getting closest to it. But as I say, Adrian and Phil, you both went over, so you both scored nothing, which leaves us at John 4, Adrian 2, Phil 0. This is an absolute shock. I guess you're a little bit rusty after the last couple of weeks, Phil.
It's It kind of reminds me of when Liverpool used to go off on those warm weather training camps and come back, and you'd think they'd be refreshed, but you just couldn't find their rhythm. So this is the game.
It really is. It really is. Our winner tonight will be decided in the round that separates the men from the boys, the Jude Bellinghams from the Jude Laws. It's no theme in particular, ridiculously easy rapid fire round. The score you get in this round will be added to your score in the previous round, and there will be 40 seconds for everyone to answer from the same set of questions. So we're going to start with John, then on to Adrian, then on to Phil. If you get a question correct, I keep asking you questions until you get one wrong. And once you get a question wrong, I'll move on to the next person. And your incorrect answer also means the deduction of 1 point. John Duggan, are you ready?
Yes.
Your 40 seconds starts now. Who won Euro 2016?
It was Portugal.
Correct. In what year did Simon Zebo last play for Ireland?
2017.
Correct. Who's top of Ligue 1?
Lyon.
No, Lille. Who came third at the 2018 World Cup, Adrian?
Germany.
No, Belgium. Who are reigning champions of the NBA, Phil?
Golden State.
No, Lakers. Where did the 2007 Rugby World Cup take place, John?
France.
Correct. Northern Ireland qualified for Euro 22 this week after beating which team in the playoff?
Ukraine.
Correct. Name any German club not called Dortmund that Thomas Tuchel has managed.
Mainz.
Correct. Anyway, he absolutely romps home. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. -1 is the final score. John Duggan, what do you have to say for yourself? Another massive win.
Well, I said to Joe and Phil last week that Adrian, I'll bring for Masters dinner, so I don't know what I'm going to have to do for Adrian and Phil this week. I don't know. Maybe buy them both a pint.
Well done, JD. That was a masterclass. I'm just happy to finish second. I'm on the podium. I'm happy to be there. And Phil let's slide down this week.
What happened?
This is the front three at Liverpool. This is like 9 blanks at Anfield this season. Just couldn't get it done.
Astonishing.
Yeah, bad champions. Bad champions.
Roy Keane will have a word or two
sloppy
to say about you, Phil.
Yeah, very sloppy.
That is it for the Crappy Quiz this Friday. Congratulations to John Duggan, commiseration to Adrian, and commiserations to Phil as well. We'll see you here in the same place next Friday on the Crappy Quiz.
Thank you.
Cheers,
man.
Oh, you're kidding me.
September. Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
Is that right?
I know, it's not right.
Anybody else?
Leash, was it?
Like, that is one of the most stupid questions.
Darius Vassell? Seriously, you all need to just stay quiet. This is getting really annoying doing this quiz.
What is going on here?
Time, as always, to talk to John Giles. Evening, John.
Evening, Nathan.
So it was a busy week in the Champions League. Liverpool are out, but Manchester City are through to the semi-finals. We'll talk about all 4 matches. Manchester City first went behind against Borussia Dortmund. We've seen their struggles in the Champions Leagues in recent years where everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. They showed some good character last night to, I won't say grind it out, because I think they were comfortably the better team. What did you make of their performance?
I thought it was very good, Nathan. They lost the goal early on, as we know. But they kept their patience. You know, they kept playing. I mean, Dortmund are quite a good side. They weren't making it easy for them. So they didn't, as can happen with teams, as you know, they lose their head and they start doing silly things. They kept going and deserved to win it in the end. They got a penalty kick and that got them ahead as well on the away goals, because at one stage they were behind on the away goals. But good performance, good all-round performance from them.
What did you make of De Bruyne's performance?
He was very good, Nathan. I think probably it could be his best position. He was more or less playing as a false number 9, as they call them nowadays. He didn't play in midfield. He played up front more or less, but coming in from deep positions. And I think he's better in that position. I don't think he's at his best when he's got the responsibility to do what's needed to be done in the middle of the field all the time, Nathan.
So you just want him as that you just want him as that creative force with no great responsibilities.
Yeah, he's a tremendously gifted lad. But I think as a midfield player, he doesn't fill all the boxes for me in that position. You know, to take responsibility from getting it from front to back. But when he gets it, he's very gifted. But usually when players like at their best in that position. They dictate the play. And he doesn't do that all the time, in my opinion, in the middle of the field. So where you leave him free to do what he's really, really gifted at, which is to beat players, make the right passes up around the penalty box, and score goals himself, he's a hugely gifted individual.
Would the concern be, if you're playing him in that more advanced false nine role, that against certain teams, if they figure out how to play against him, that he could become quite isolated, that he won't have the influence that maybe he'd have deeper in the pitch, that actually you're guaranteed if he's playing as part of a midfield, he's always going to be getting on the ball, whereas sometimes, maybe further up, it's out of his hands, he's reliant on somebody else getting it to him?
Yeah, but I find in midfield, Nathan, he's not always getting on the ball.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, he's gifted when he does get a breeze. I don't think he's that type of player that dictates the play as a general, as it were, you know, in the middle of the field. Now, when he gets the ball in the middle of the field, he's very, very gifted and can do tremendous things. But I think when Guardiola releases him from the middle of the field, don't forget he's not playing up front. He's not up there. He's still in and around the middle of the field at times, Nathan, but he doesn't have the responsibility to get on it from a deep position and connect the play from there. He's free to use his gifts, which he's well gifted to do, which is score goals, make goals in that position without the responsibility of having to do it in the middle of the field.
What do you make of that false number 9 role? Because listen, football develops and changes, and you would often talk about back in the 60s that inside right, inside left role that really no longer exists within football, it seems. The false 9 and not playing with a striker, not playing with an Aguero in that Manchester City team. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think Aguero would be playing, Nathan, if he's had a bad injury in terms, a bad season in terms of injuries and that. So he's not fit enough to play. I think if he was fit enough, he would play. But he was an out-and-out striker. You know, like there's no way that De Bruyne would play in that position. In fact, he could play in that position with Aguero. You know?
Yeah.
Because Aguero could play in a much and used to playing in a much forward position. I mean, you wouldn't see De Bruyne in the actual striker's position where he's a target man. That's not his game. But with a free role, he has the ability to come deeper, get on the ball, score his goals, and make goals. So I wouldn't see him as an out-and-out striker in any way whatsoever.
The way that Manchester City use him then, obviously there's a massive amount of movement, whether it's Foden or Mahrez getting into that most attacking position. You can see the likes of Gundogan or Bernardo Silva make runs past De Bruyne as well. Do you find him a very interesting team to watch?
Yeah, well, I always find Manchester City interesting to watch. And very, very attractive in what they do, Nathan. I mean, they don't please everybody because they think maybe they overdo it and don't play it forward or get behind people. But that's the way Guardiola wants to play. And I think he's strengthened the defensive situation with getting the new lad in.
Yes.
I think he's been really, really good for them, and I think he's concentrating. And Stones has come back to where he was a few years with the promise, or fulfilling most of it now in the centre back position. So they're not conceding as many goals as they did last year by any means, and they're quite good at the back now. So I think that has been an improvement on the team, definitely. But all the players can play, as you know, whereas Mahrez and Silva, all the players can control the ball play. Foden played last night, scored a really good goal again, and you know he can play at any level. So it was a good performance. They went the goal down, as we say, which everybody knows, Nathan. And sometimes it's difficult to get it back up, to keep your head. At that stage, they're losing the tie. But they kept on it, doing the right things, kept their patience, and that's easier said than done. But that's what they did, and did it extremely well.
There were a lot of very exciting young players on the pitch last night for Manchester City with Phil Foden, and for Borussia Dortmund with Erling Haaland and Jude Bellingham in the middle of midfield. Like, Bellingham's only 17. There's a lot of questions about whether he's ready to be part of the England squad for Euro 2020. Scored a goal last night, brilliant composed finish. Like, when you look at a player of 17 doing it at that level, Where do you think he's going to go in his career?
Well, he's got all the makings of it, Nathan, and certainly I'd have no problem at all with his age if I was Southgate. If I thought he was good enough, I'd put him in, Nathan. You know, the really greats, if he goes on to be a great, hopefully he will. I think he has the ability to do so. They're never too young. You know, like you go back over, I know Pele came, he was an exception as well, played at 17. I think Duncan Edwards, the old Manchester United, played at 7. There's other lads who've done it, Nathan, who are capable of doing it. I wouldn't be bothered about the age.
So do you think he is good enough?
He looks good enough to me. Now, I haven't seen that much of him, but what I've seen of him, he looks the real deal. Yeah, definitely. So I wouldn't be bothered about his age at all.
Yeah. Well, at all. What is it about him from the bits you've seen of him, even in last night's performance, that make him stand out?
Well, the goal alone was brilliantly taken. But his overall composure, I think he's quick. His control is good. I think he's got a good attitude to it. He's quite looks a good, strong individual, even though he's only 17, Nathan. So, age-wise, you know, I don't think you're ever too old, you're never too young in football. If you can do it. And I just reading yesterday about the lads that he played with at Birmingham. And obviously, the players that know you best are the players that play alongside you. And these were all older guys than him, because I think he played when he was 15. And they were raving about him.
Yeah.
You know, they were saying he's the real stuff. And one of the older players, in training and playing, he said he was our best player by a long way. Now, they're players who know him. They played with him, not for a lot of time, but they did play. And players your fellow players are the players who can judge you best of all, Nathan. So that's a very, very good recommendation coming from players that actually played with him for Birmingham when he was only 15, 16.
Yeah, I don't know if you read the story that they actually retired his jersey number at Birmingham.
I think that was down to the a lot of the money that they got from him. Nathan.
Yeah, bit of marketing.
You know, Birmingham and a lot of these clubs wouldn't be flushed. You know, and with him, I think he went for 30 million. That's a lot of money nowadays for a club like Birmingham. Birmingham at one time are one of the big clubs, great support, but they would be short of money, and because I think a lot of the supporters weren't too keen on it. You know, like he only played what was 40 matches. Like to be retiring his jersey. You know, usually it's people who play for about 15 seasons that happens to. But I'd say they were so short of the money they'd be glad to give his jersey up.
Just on Phil Foden then, he's 20 years of age now. Pep Guardiola seems to have done a brilliant job in developing over the last 3 or 4 years. He's never gone out on loan. At times there were questions that he wasn't getting enough game time at Manchester City. Even this season, there have been periods of the season where he's held him back for a run of 7-8 games and just given him a few minutes off the bench. Do you look at Foden and think he is ready right now, that we're looking at a player who is going to develop very quickly into one of the world's best?
Well, I think he's ready for the Premiership. I think he's ready for the international team. Whether he goes on to be one of the world's best, I don't know. Maybe. But he's certainly good enough to be in the team. And I think in Guardiola's case, with the panel that they have of players, Nathan, he can be patient with him and bring him on at the right time. I mean, if he was playing in a lesser club, say he did what Bellingham did, if he was at Birmingham, he'd be in the first team all the time, you know, and most other clubs. But I think the way to bring him along, he's only 20 now. I think the way to bring him along at the level that they play at and they're expected to play at and to win trophies, then I think what he's doing is ideal for him. Do I think he's going to be the real deal? Definitely.
So Manchester City through to the semi-finals. They'll play Paris Saint-Germain in the semi-finals, who just about did the job against Bayern Munich to progress. What were your thoughts on Neymar's performance? 29 now. It felt like one of the most mature performances I've ever seen from Neymar.
I thought he played well, really well, Nathan. I think he played well last year as well. Was it Tuchel had him there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job with him. I mean, there's no doubt in his talent. I mean, he's a beautiful player, and it's just whether he can keep himself going, if he's living his life outside the game as well as he should. I don't know, but certainly when he's fit and well, and he can be as good as anybody else I've seen. Can be, but the great players over the years, there's no can be with them. They just do it. But he's a very, very gifted lad. And on a certain day, I thought he played really, really well the other day. He hit the woodwork twice in the match that could have finished the game off. A hugely talented individual, there's no doubt about that. And it's just a question now. What is he, 29 now?
29, yeah.
Yeah, so he should be at the peak of his career. And there shouldn't be any ifs and buts now. Is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? I think he definitely has the equipment to be one of the greats. Now he's 29. He hasn't proven that yet, but it's never too late. And he's going to be a very, very dangerous player. That's for sure against Manchester City.
It's going to be a brilliant couple of games because of the danger that Paris Saint-Germain possess in attack. And it's not just Neymar, it's also Kylian Mbappe, who is alongside Erling Haaland, we didn't really mention with Borussia Dortmund, who it feels are going to take over maybe from Messi and Ronaldo. Mbappe delivering on what you expected from what we saw at the World Cup?
Yes. Yeah, I think he's very... How old is Mbappe? 21, 22 or something?
Yeah, 22 at this stage.
I think he's the real McCoy as well. And I think he'll get better and better. He's a hugely influential player now. And so is Haaland, if I know you're going to mention him anyway. But I think Mbappe is up there to definitely be the next Ronaldo, for sure. I don't know if anybody's going to be the next Messi. But certainly he has the equipment and he seems to have the attitude. And I think there's bar injury, there's nothing stopping him, Nathan.
Yeah, it sounds like you're enjoying watching football at the moment. That there's a lot of players who you're enjoying watching.
There's a lot of players there. I mean, Haaland, I think, could be the best of them all. He's only 20 now, and I think he's got it all. And he's quick, he's strong, he sees the pass, his positional sense is good. I think this kid, along with Mbappe, could be two of the greats, definitely. And it's a privilege to watch them, Nathan, I must say. We all love watching great players. I mean, we don't see that many of them. We have to enjoy them when we see them. But I think these two lads particularly could be two of the greats in the future.
We did that series last year where you went through your all-time greatest teams, and it was clear, you've seen all of the modern-day greats over the last 50, 60 years. When you look at the great attacking players of that generation, and you're talking about Haaland potentially having the potential to get into that sort of grouping. What do you look for in a 20-year-old? Is it all about the movement and the awareness for a striker that they need?
Well, the first thing I'd look for, Nathan, is the attitude. Are they honest? Are they doing what's best for the team? Are they making the right moves? The right moves, you lose the ball sometimes, but it's not for the sake of being trying to overdo it or trying to show off or not doing what's best for the team. I mean, that's what makes the great players. They all do it in different ways. But if you look at a player and say, well, on his day, if he's in the mood, my opinion, they never make great players, Nathan. Once you hear, the doubts, in the mood, well, when it's in... That's no good. The great players are in their mood, which is to play for the team every game they play. Now, they don't always play well. Even all the great players don't play well. But have they tried to play well? Have they tried for the team? Yes. And all great players have days when it doesn't work for them. But it's not for the work of effort or the want of effort and approach and attitude to the game. And what I see of these two lads, and Foden from what I see of them, they seem to have that attitude, Nathan.
So that's Paris Saint-Germain, Manchester City on one side of the draw. The other side, Real Madrid against Chelsea. Real Madrid knocked Liverpool out last night. They had the chances, Liverpool.
They definitely did, Nathan. And Salah in particular, where he's usually deadly. I mean, he had a chance after 5 minutes to really get the first goal, which would set trend for the night. There's no doubt. Makes the opposition nervous when they score a goal so early in the game. And he didn't do it. He had 2 or 3 chances, didn't do it. Now, you'd have to say that Courtois, is that his name, Courtois, the goalkeeper?
Thibaut Courtois, yeah.
Very, very good. I mean, he made 2 saves he had no right to make, and definitely kept him in the game. But Salah, at his best, I think, would have put those chances away, Nathan.
Why do you think he's not at his best?
Well, to be fair, he scored a fair amount. He scored more goals than anybody else this season.
Do we just expect too much in that we're talking about him not being at his best, yet he's right there in the running for top scorer in the Premier League? I think he's 26 goals in all competitions.
I think he's done well, but I still don't think he's at his best.
Yeah.
You know, he seems to be not as happy as with himself, as I see it, as he did last season. And we have seen comments from him in recent times, in the past, where he's certainly hasn't discouraged the questions that he was asked about leaving Liverpool.
Yeah.
He's put them off, and the comments he made were in foreign papers. But he knows as well as anybody else, there's no such thing as foreign papers today. When you're talking in the way that he was talking, it has to come back to Liverpool and to England, what he was saying. So, I mean, I think in any situation where a player is asked, well, do you fancy moving? You just say, no, I don't even want to talk about that. I'm very happy at Liverpool. He didn't actually say that, you know.
No, it's sort of been hanging over the club for the last few months.
He didn't say he was unhappy, but he didn't say he was happy either. And usually in that situation, it's usually a sign that there's something going on that shouldn't be going on.
Yeah. John, we'll get on to Chelsea maybe next week, and we'll be able to preview that semi-final. But before we let you go, I do want to ask you about Shea Healy, who passed away this week, sadly, at the age of 78. And he was responsible for one of the most memorable moments of Irish television ever, really. And you were part of it, a Nighthawks episode. Yourself and Eamon Dunphy. Drink may have been taken. Was he somebody you knew well?
I didn't know him very well. I met him on a few occasions. And I was a great fan of his because he's a great musician, great. I mean, the song Johnny Logan's song, you know, that was one of the most popular songs ever. And I met him a few times, and he was a very humble man. I liked him. Great musician, Nathan. And no, he was. I didn't see that much of him, but I certainly admired him and I liked him. And very, very sorry to see his passing.
Well, he knew how to create an atmosphere, that's for sure, how to get people talking and to get people singing, John. I know you haven't seen or heard this too often since, but for anyone who, maybe of a younger generation who doesn't remember it at the time, this, as far as I'm aware, is the night that Ireland qualified for Italia 90, the November night. Nighthawks is on afterwards, and yourself and Eamon Dunphy are in a conversation with Shea Healy. I'll just play it to you, John.
And what about the game today? Seriously, sum it up for us. Did you enjoy it? Apart from the fact that we won.
I don't think it was a very good game, really, but it wasn't the game itself today. It was the actual official qualification for the World Cup finals. It was the event, not the game itself.
And will they screw you little goals, Eamon, do you reckon?
There's no such thing as a screw little goal. This team has made history. And there's no such thing as a bad goal. And today was for generations of people in this country. This was the day for soccer. And it was a day for Jimmy McGee, Jack Charlton, Ireland.
You have a big
Opal.
There's something up
Arnold O'Byrne. Let's not forget Arnold. Arnold, the man behind Opal, the man who really makes the Irish team buzz.
You told me he never laughed. He laughs. John, did you ever play? You played against Jack Charlton in your day, didn't you, as a player?
I played with him.
You played with him, did you?
Leeds for 13 years.
Only for 10 years.
Pardon me.
I never played with Arnold O'Byrne, though. It's one of the great regrets of my international.
We had the FAI Opal Hall of Fame Award for the first time last Sunday night, and they gave it to Charlie Hurley. There's the man. The greatest man ever graced an Irish soccer pitch. Charlie Hurley played one season in the first division.
I thought I might have got an invite.
He didn't even get invited. You didn't get an invite.
I mind the award.
Well, can I make up to you tonight, John?
Yeah, make a start.
I'll ask you to sing here tonight.
No.
I go on.
If you say you can't
voice.
Just for us in case, Come on, here we go.
Oh, it's great stuff, John. That is great stuff. There was a few Bacardi and Cokes that night, were there?
I'd say there was quite a few, Nathan, to be honest. quite a few. I think we just qualified for the World Cup and we were out for the night anyway. Let's put it that way. I'm glad I heard that because I don't remember the night.
That was a typical night out with Eamon, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it was pretty memorable stuff. All right, there was plenty of things happening there you wouldn't get away with in television these days, I think.
No, definitely not. No. Times have changed, Nathan.
Yeah, not all for the better, I think it's fair to say, John.
Well, we'll keep going.
We certainly will. John, great stuff as always. Maybe we'll have one of those nights sometime in the future if the rest of us ever get vaccinated.
I look forward to that, Nathan. Definitely.
Great stuff, John.
Yeah.
Lovely
Thanks,
stuff.
Nathan.
We'll talk to you
Bye.
next week.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved